The human senses are our first language with the world, the gentle doorway through which all of reality enters the mind. From the moment of birth, before words are formed, and before thoughts are shaped into patterns, the senses are already awake, already sending their quiet streams of information into the brain. A newborn opens its eyes to blurred shapes, feels the warmth of skin against skin, hears the rhythm of voices and heartbeats, and in that flood of signals begins the lifelong dialogue between body and environment. It is this dialogue, unending and unbroken, that we will slowly explore together, as if walking through a soft-lit gallery, where each room holds one of our senses, framed in calm explanation. When we speak of the senses, most people recall the familiar five: sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. This grouping is old, so old that it can be traced back to the writings of Aristotle, who believed that humans possessed exactly these five ways of knowing the world. The list is simple and elegant, and it has shaped centuries of thought about how we perceive. Yet, as with so many early ideas, the simplicity is not the full truth. Modern science has revealed that the body carries within it a number of additional senses. Quieter, perhaps, less obvious, but no less essential to survival. The sense of balance, for instance, is rarely named in casual speech, yet it governs our every step and movement. The sense of the body's position, known as proprioception, works continuously in the background, guiding our limbs even in darkness. The internal sense of our body's needs, known as interoception, whispers of hunger, thirst, or the comfort of a full breath. To pause and consider this is already calming, for it reminds us that perception is not a sudden, isolated act, but a constant and seamless flow. We live immersed in a sea of sensations, and the brain is the interpreter, drawing order out of this flowing river. Even as you listen now, there are countless signals crossing your nerves. The faint brush of fabric against skin, the quiet balance that keeps you upright or resting, the rhythm of breath moving in and out, and perhaps the soft sound of words forming meaning. In truth, there is never a moment without the senses. They are continuous, unbroken, always present, even in sleep, where sounds or touches can still gently reach us. It is not only the physical body that relies upon them. Our memories and emotions are entwined with the senses in deep and intricate ways. A single scent can summon a memory long thought forgotten, a taste can call forth childhood, and the sight of a familiar place can stir comfort or longing. The senses weave experience into identity. They are not simply channels of data, but threads of meaning, tying us to the fabric of life. For this reason, to explore them is not only to study biology, but to step quietly into the story of being human. If we were to imagine life without them, the importance becomes even clearer. A world without sight would be one without color, without the soft play of light and shadow. A world without hearing would be silent, void of music, voices, and the soft rustle of leaves in wind. Without touch, the body would float without anchor, unable to feel warmth or coolness, unable to sense pain, unable even to feel its own outline. Without taste or smell, food would lose its richness, and the atmosphere of a place would fade into flatness. Even these five, which seem so basic, together build much of what we call reality. The additional senses layer on dimensions, giving us balance, timing, internal awareness, and an ability to navigate the unseen. Science shows us that senses begin not at the brain, but at the edges of the body, where specialized receptor cells wait to transform energy into signals. These receptors are tuned like instruments, each designed for a particular kind of input. Photoreceptors in the eyes respond to light, bending it into chemical changes that trigger electrical impulses. Hair cells in the inner ear respond to vibrations in the air, bending back and forth with sound waves. Mechanoreceptors in the skin detect pressure, texture, and vibration, sending information about the surfaces we touch. Taste buds on the tongue and receptor neurons in the nose respond to molecules, tiny fragments of the world itself, entering the body to be read as flavor and scent. Each receptor acts as a translator, converting the external world into the nervous system's quiet language of electricity. This translation is constant. Light enters the eyes not only in daylight but in dimness, in shadow, even when closed eyelids filter its glow. Sound waves reach the ears whether we listen actively or not, arriving in their ceaseless motion. The skin is touched by air itself. We are always sensing, whether or not attention rests upon it. Attention is a spotlight, but sensation is the background canvas that never ceases. The brain must select, filter, and decide which signals rise into awareness, for to perceive everything fully would overwhelm. And so, in each moment, the senses provide more than we notice. They are generous, constant providers, while awareness gently chooses what to keep in focus. This quiet choosing is why we can drift into sleep, even while the senses remain open. The ear still hears, but the mind drifts away from it. The skin still feels, but touch becomes background. The brain lowers its gate of attention, letting the senses hum softly in the background like distant music. To speak gently of them, as we are doing now, is to rest in that background, allowing the familiar processes of perception to settle into calm recognition. Human culture has always been fascinated by the senses, not only because they explain survival, but because they reveal how varied experience can be. Two people may look at the same sunset, yet one sees deeper hues of red. Another finds brightness too sharp. One may find sweetness overwhelming. Another may crave it. Some hear subtle notes in music that others cannot detect. The senses are universal in form but unique in experience. Each nervous system interprets slightly differently, shaped by genetics, development, and memory. This individuality is why taste differs across cultures, why music moves people in different ways, and why smell can awaken memories particular to one life alone. The senses also give us scale. They remind us that the human range of perception is both vast and limited. Vision reaches across great distances but cannot see ultraviolet light that a bee perceives. Hearing spans a wide range of frequencies but misses the ultrasonic world of a bat or the infrasonic calls of elephants. Our skin detects gentle pressure, yet a spider feels with hairs so fine they can sense air currents. These comparisons show that human senses are not the whole of reality, but simply one version of it. Each species inhabits a unique sensory world, known as an Umwelt, a term from biology that means the perceptual bubble within which an organism lives. For us, the Umwelt is shaped by sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, and the quieter senses that support them. In the end, to speak of the senses is to speak of connection. They tie us to the environment, to one another, and to our own bodies. They remind us of our limits, while also revealing the wonder of perception itself. As we continue through this exploration, we will walk gently through each sense, not in haste, but with steady attention, as though walking through a quiet forest and pausing to notice each tree, each sound, each texture of earth beneath the feet. In doing so, we can come to rest in the awareness that sensing is not an effort but a gift, always present, always active, always carrying us through the unfolding of life. 2. What is a sense? When we pause to reflect on the question of what a sense truly is, the answer appears simple at first glance. yet becomes more intricate the longer we dwell upon it. A sense, in its most basic form, is a way of receiving information. It is the bridge between the world outside and the world within, a translator that converts physical or chemical signals into the language of the nervous system. But this definition, while accurate, does not capture the depth of the concept, for the senses are not merely mechanical processes. They are living threads woven into the experience of being human, inseparable from memory, emotion, and thought. A sense can be thought of as a doorway, but not a rigid one. Each sense admits a particular kind of stimulus, whether it is light, sound, pressure, or molecules in the air. These stimuli exist independently of us, yet without the sense to perceive them, they remain invisible and silent, unrecognized and untranslatable. Light, after all, is simply electromagnetic radiation until the eye transforms it into color. Sound is only a vibration in air until the ear turns it into tone. Taste is only dissolved molecules until the tongue and brain interpret it as sweet, salty, sour, bitter, or savory. A sense is thus an interpreter, standing between the raw world and the lived world. Without interpretation, reality might be endless and incomprehensible. With it, reality becomes ordered, meaningful, and uniquely human. Throughout history, people have tried to define how many senses we truly have. Aristotle spoke of 5, a number that seemed sufficient for centuries and became fixed in common thought. The 5 senses were neat and symmetrical, easy to remember, and seemed to match the way we navigate the world. Yet science, with its careful exploration of detail, revealed that this number was incomplete. Balance, the sense of equilibrium, is vital yet unmentioned in that classical list. Proprioception, the sense of where the body is in space, works every moment without acknowledgement. Interoception, the awareness of the body's inner state, informs us of hunger, thirst, and comfort. Even the perception of time, though not a sense in the traditional form, acts as a continuous awareness of rhythm and passage. By one modern count, humans may possess 10 or more senses, depending on how we choose to define them. This leads us to the question, what makes something a sense? At its core, a sense requires a receptor, a pathway, and a perception. There must first be a specialized structure capable of detecting a particular kind of stimulus. This might be a photoreceptor in the eye, a mechanoreceptor in the skin, or a chemoreceptor in the tongue. These receptors are finely tuned instruments, sensitive to narrow ranges of input. When activated, they convert the external energy or substance into electrical signals, the only language the nervous system can understand. Those signals then travel along neural pathways to the brain, where they are processed, compared, and interpreted. Perception emerges when the brain organizes these signals into experience. A flash of light becomes the sight of a star. A vibration in air becomes the sound of a voice. A molecule drifting in air becomes the scent of a flower. The full chain receptor, pathway, perception, is what we mean when we speak of a sense. Yet even this definition does not fully embrace the richness of sensory experience. Consider the overlap between senses. Taste, for instance, is rarely experienced in isolation. What we call flavor is a blending of taste, smell, and touch, with each sense contributing to the whole. The crunch of texture, the warmth of spice, the aromatic notes that rise into the nose, all of these fuse into the singular impression of a meal. In the same way, balance is deeply linked to vision and to touch, each system compensating for the others. Close your eyes and walk in darkness, and the sense of balance depends more heavily on the body's position cues. remove sensation from the feet, and vision must take over to guide steps. The senses are not separate channels, but a woven net, each strand strengthening the others. There is also the question of threshold. A sense is not simply on or off, but exists along a spectrum of sensitivity. The eye can perceive a single photon under the right conditions, yet it is equally capable of adjusting to the brightness of midday sun. The ear can detect the faintest rustle, yet also withstand the thunder of drums. The skin can sense the softest touch or the sharp sting of heat. Each sense adapts, shifts, and regulates itself to protect the body and provide the most useful information. This adaptability is part of what defines a sense, for perception is never static. It is alive, always adjusting to circumstance. Another layer of complexity is that senses are not universal. Each person experiences them differently, shaped by genetics, health, and experience. Some people are born without sight or hearing, and their other senses often heighten in compensation. Others may perceive colors differently due to variations in photoreceptor cells, leading to forms of color vision that are unique. Taste can vary depending on the number of taste buds or the sensitivity of receptors. Smell, too, shows wide variation, with some people entirely unable to detect certain odors. These differences remind us that senses are not absolute measures of reality. They are individualized ways of interacting with it. Philosophers have long debated whether senses reveal the world as it truly is, or only as it appears to us. From one view, senses provide a direct window into reality, faithfully translating the environment. From another view, they provide only a constructed version, limited by our biology. Colors, for example, exist as wavelengths of light, but the experience of red or blue is a creation of the nervous system. Sound waves exist as patterns of vibration, but the sweetness of music is something the brain assembles. In this way, senses are both real and interpretive, both windows and painters, shaping reality even as they reveal it. What is consistent across all these perspectives is that senses are essential to survival. They warn of danger, guide toward nourishment, and sustain interaction with the world. The sharpness of pain keeps us from harm. The sense of balance prevents falls. The awareness of hunger ensures that we seek food. Even the most subtle senses, such as the awareness of blood, oxygen, or carbon dioxide levels, operate continuously to maintain life. They are guardians, always active, whether or not we acknowledge them. And beyond survival, they are sources of joy and meaning. The color of a sunset, the taste of fruit, the sound of laughter, the feeling of soft fabric, the scent of rain. These gifts are what make life vivid, layered, and rich. They transform the mechanical into the meaningful, the ordinary into the memorable. To ask what a sense is, then, is to ask not only about biology, but about experience. It is to ask how we come to know, to feel, and to remember. In essence, a sense is not just a channel of perception, but a companion to consciousness. It accompanies us through every moment, waking and dreaming, connecting the body to the world and the mind to the body. It is at once physical, neurological, and experiential, a triad that cannot be separated. The more we reflect on this, the more the answer expands. A sense is a way of receiving. It is a way of knowing. It is a way of being. It is the continuous touch between self and universe, as subtle as breath, as vivid as light, and as quiet as the pulse that moves through us in every moment. 3. Beyond the famous 5. For much of human history, the senses were understood through the lens of the classical 5. Sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch were believed to be the complete set, the full catalog of the ways we connect with the world. This idea is elegant in its simplicity, and because it was first articulated in the writings of Aristotle, it carried authority across cultures for centuries. It made sense to people in everyday life. We see the world with our eyes. We hear with our ears. We taste with our tongues. We smell with our noses. And we touch with our skin. These five seem to encompass all of experience. But as science grew more precise, as observations became deeper and more carefully tested, it became clear that the picture was incomplete. Humans do not live by five senses alone. We live with many more, some so constant and quiet that they pass unnoticed until we stop to reflect on them. One of the first to be recognized beyond the traditional list is the sense of balance, also known as the vestibular sense. This is the ability to know whether we are upright, to orient ourselves in space, and to detect acceleration or movement. Without balance, walking would be a series of staggering missteps, and even standing still would be unstable. The vestibular system resides in the inner ear, where delicate semicircular canals are filled with fluid that shifts as we move. Tiny hair cells inside these canals detect the movement of the fluid, sending signals to the brain that inform it of motion and position. It is this sense that allows a dancer to spin and still find the ground, a child to ride a swing and know which way is up, or any of us to walk across uneven terrain without falling. Though rarely named in casual speech, balance is one of the most vital senses, silently shaping every step we take. Another sense, closely linked, yet distinct, is proprioception. This is sometimes called the sense of body position. It allows us to know where our limbs are without looking at them, to raise an arm in the dark, to walk without staring at our feet, to type on a keyboard without watching every key. This sense arises from receptors in muscles, tendons, and joints, which report on stretch, tension, and angle. Together, they create a constant awareness of our body's map in space. When proprioception is disrupted, movements become clumsy and uncertain. A person may need to watch their own feet just to remain steady. With it, however, movement becomes fluid, graceful, and efficient, a quiet choreography, guided by signals that never reach conscious awareness. Still more subtle is interoception, the awareness of the body's inner state. This includes the feeling of hunger, thirst, fullness, or the need to breathe. It includes awareness of heartbeat, of warmth, of fatigue, and even the quiet discomfort that signals illness. Interoception arises from sensors in organs and tissues that detect chemical balances, stretch, and internal pressure. These signals travel to the brain, often to areas such as the insular cortex, where they create the background hum of bodily awareness. We may not always notice them until they grow strong, a dry mouth demanding water, an empty stomach calling for food, or a racing heart reminding us of exertion. Yet they are always present, guiding behavior and maintaining survival. There are still others, often debated among scientists, but increasingly recognized as genuine. Thermoception, for instance, is the sense of temperature, both external and internal. It is what allows us to feel warmth on the skin or to shiver in cold. Nociception, the sense of pain, alerts us to harm and prevents greater injury. Though often unpleasant, pain is a sense that protects life by demanding attention. Chronoception, the sense of time, is less tangible, but no less real, guiding our rhythms and cycles, shaping our awareness of duration and passage. Even the sense of magnetoreception, common in birds and some other animals, has been tentatively explored in humans, suggesting that traces of it may exist, though faint. To step beyond the famous five, then, is to enter a world of hidden senses. Quiet, constant, essential. They do not call attention to themselves unless something goes wrong. When balance falters, we notice dizziness. When proprioception weakens, we notice clumsiness. When interoception fails, we miss the signals of thirst or hunger. But when they are working well, they remain in the background, supporting all that we do. It is only by pausing and studying them that their presence is revealed. The reason Aristotle's five remained dominant for so long is not surprising. The five senses are the ones that enter most directly into conscious awareness. They provide vivid, distinct experiences. The sight of color, the sound of music, the taste of fruit, the smell of flowers, the touch of fabric. They are immediate and easy to describe. The others are quieter, less obvious, and not always easy to articulate. Balance does not present itself as a sensation, so much as the absence of falling. Proprioception does not present itself as a conscious image, but as the ease of movement. Interoception is felt only in moments of need. Because they are not as vivid, they were overlooked. Yet science, with its careful methods, drew them into view and showed that the picture of human perception is far richer than the classical list suggests. To recognize these additional senses is to appreciate the complexity of the nervous system. It is a reminder that the brain is not a simple receiver, but an intricate network that integrates signals from every corner of the body. Each sense contributes a layer, and together they form the tapestry of experience. Without balance, sight and hearing would not be enough to guide us through the world. Without proprioception, touch and vision could not coordinate graceful motion. Without interoception, hunger and thirst would go unheeded, and life would fade. It is also humbling to realize that other animals live with senses we do not share in full. Birds navigate with magnetic fields. Sharks detect faint electrical currents in water. Bats navigate with echolocation. And bees see ultraviolet patterns invisible to human eyes. Compared to these, our human set of senses is both extraordinary and limited. We perceive a rich world, yet it is only one slice of the broader reality that surrounds us. The world is larger than our senses can reveal, and each species lives within its own sensory bubble, perceiving what it needs for survival. As we explore further in the coming parts, we will look closely at the familiar senses of sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell, while keeping in mind that they are only part of the full story. Beyond the famous five lies a family of other senses, each quietly supporting life, each shaping our perception in ways we may not consciously notice. To acknowledge them is to expand our view of what it means to be human. It is to see that sensing is not a single act, but a symphony, played across many instruments, with some melodies loud and bright, yet all blending together into the music of experience. 4. Vision, light and the eye. Among all the human senses, vision is often considered the most dominant, the one that occupies the greatest portion of the brain and provides the richest stream of information about the world. To see is to gather light, to transform invisible waves of energy into vivid images that allow us to navigate, to recognize, to remember, and to dream. When we speak of vision, we are speaking of a process so seamless and so constant that it often feels effortless. Yet beneath that apparent simplicity lies a structure of remarkable delicacy, a collaboration between the eye and the brain that unfolds with every blink and every glance. The human eye itself is a small and intricate organ, roughly spherical in shape, set into the protective sockets of the skull. From the outside, it appears simple, a sphere with a colored iris at its center, and within the iris, a dark pupil through which light enters. But this appearance hides a layered complexity, for the eye is not a single structure but a system of tissues, fluids, and receptors working together. Light, which has traveled across space, reflected from objects in the environment, enters the eye and begins a journey that will ultimately end as vision. The first structure it encounters is the cornea, a transparent curved surface that both protects the eye and bends incoming light. This bending, known as refraction, begins the process of focusing the image. Behind the cornea lies the aqueous humor, a clear fluid that nourishes the front of the eye and maintains its shape. The iris, the colored ring that gives eyes their shades of brown, blue, green, or gray, is more than ornament. It is a muscular diaphragm, opening and closing the pupil at its center to regulate how much light enters. In bright sunlight, the iris contracts, narrowing the pupil to protect the delicate tissues within. In dim light, the iris relaxes, allowing the pupil to widen and admit more photons. This quiet adjustment is constant, happening every moment, unnoticed, unless we deliberately watch it in a mirror. It is part of the automatic rhythm that allows vision to adapt to changing environments, from the dazzling brightness of day to the quiet dimness of evening. Beyond the iris and pupil lies the lens, a transparent structure suspended by fine fibers that can alter its shape. By flattening or rounding, the lens adjusts focus, allowing us to see objects both near and far with clarity. This ability, called accommodation, depends on the flexibility of the lens and the coordination of surrounding muscles. With youth, the lens is supple, shifting easily between different focal lengths. With age, it gradually stiffens, making it harder to focus on nearby objects, a condition familiar to many as the need for reading glasses. The lens directs the focus light deeper into the eye, toward the innermost surface where vision truly begins. The retina. The retina is a thin sheet of neural tissue lining the back of the eye. It is here that light is transformed into electrical signals, for the retina is home to millions of specialized receptors known as rods and cones. Rods are highly sensitive to light and allow us to see in dim conditions, though they do not detect color. Cones, in contrast, function best in brighter light and are responsible for color vision. There are three main types of cones, each tuned to different ranges of wavelength. 1. Most sensitive to short wavelengths, corresponding to blues. 1 to medium wavelengths, corresponding to greens, and 1 to longer wavelengths, corresponding to reds. Together, the activity of these cones allows the brain to perceive a full spectrum of colors, blending signals to create the rich palette of experience. At the center of the retina lies the fovea, a small depression densely packed with cones. This region provides the sharpest vision, allowing us to read fine print, recognize faces, or perceive detail in art and nature. The periphery of the retina, where rods are more abundant, is less detailed but more sensitive to motion and dim light. This distribution creates a balance. Central vision for clarity and color. The eye, in effect, has multiple modes of seeing, tuned to different aspects of the world. The signals generated by rods and cones travel through a network of retinal neurons, passing through layers of processing before converging onto the optic nerve. The optic nerve, a thick bundle of fibers, carries this information out of the eye and toward the brain. Interestingly, there is a small region where the optic nerve exits the retina that contains no photoreceptors at all. This is the blind spot, a portion of the visual field where no image is captured. Yet we rarely notice it, for the brain fills in the missing space seamlessly, blending information from the other eye and from surrounding regions. In this way, vision is not only about receiving signals, but about constructing a coherent picture from them, a picture that feels whole even when gaps exist. The journey of vision does not end in the eye. Once signals enter the optic nerve, they travel to the optic chiasm, where fibers from each eye partially cross, ensuring that visual information from the right side of the world is processed in the left hemisphere of the brain, and vice versa. From there, signals move to the thalamus, a central hub of sensory processing, and onward to the primary visual cortex at the back of the brain. Here, the brain begins the work of interpreting the raw signals, detecting edges, shapes, motion, and patterns. Additional visual areas expand upon this, constructing perception of depth, color, and meaning. The brain is not a passive receiver but an active participant, organizing, interpreting, and sometimes even predicting what the eyes have captured. One of the remarkable features of vision is its adaptability. When light fades, the eyes gradually adjust, increasing sensitivity and shifting reliance from cones to rods. This is why stars appear more vivid after minutes spent in darkness. When light suddenly brightens, the eyes constrict the pupils and readjust, protecting the receptors from overload. Vision also adapts to context, interpreting colors relative to their surroundings, adjusting perception so that objects appear consistent even as lighting changes. This phenomenon, known as color constancy, allows us to recognize a red apple as red, whether it is viewed in morning sunlight or under the glow of evening lamps. Though vision often feels effortless, it is in fact the result of immense neural effort. A large portion of the brain is devoted to processing visual information, more than to any other sense. The act of seeing is not only about detecting light, but about integrating it into memory, emotion, and meaning. We recognize familiar faces, recall places from years past, and interpret gestures and expressions, all through vision. It is both a scientific process and a deeply human experience. Without vision, life shifts into another mode of being, guided more by sound, touch, and other senses. Yet for those who see, vision often becomes the primary sense, shaping the way we describe the world. We speak of insight as seeing clearly, of understanding as having a vision, of imagination as visualizing. The language itself reveals how deeply vision is tied to knowledge and perception. To study the eye, then, is to study not only anatomy but also the way in which the mind transforms light into reality. Each blink is the beginning of countless photons entering, striking receptors, becoming impulses, and traveling into the brain, where they are woven into the seamless fabric of experience. We rarely pause to notice this, yet every moment of sight is a marvel of quiet precision. Vision is not simply looking outward, but a constant dialogue between world and mind, a gentle translation of energy into awareness, and perhaps the most vivid of all the senses that carry us through life. 5. How the brain sees. The act of seeing does not end when light touches the eye. In fact, one might say that it is only just beginning. The eye is a remarkable organ, but it is only the gateway. Vision as we know it, rich, colorful, detailed, and filled with meaning, is crafted in the brain. Without the brain's constant interpretation, the world would not appear to us as it does. Shapes would not coalesce, colors would not hold their brilliance, depth would not exist, and recognition would be impossible. To see is not merely to open the eyes, but to invite the brain into a continuous conversation with light. When light reaches the retina, it triggers receptors that generate electrical signals. These signals are not images yet, they are patterns of activity, coded in pulses and pathways. They travel along the optic nerve, a bundle of fibers carrying millions of signals simultaneously, and enter deeper structures within the skull. At the optic chiasm, some fibers from each eye cross over to the opposite side of the brain. This crossing ensures that visual information from the right half of the world is processed in the left hemisphere, and information from the left half is processed in the right. This organization may seem odd at first, but it is part of the brain's orderly mapping system, aligning sight with movement and coordination. From the optic chiasm, signals flow to the thalamus, specifically to a structure called the lateral geniculate nucleus. Here, the information is sorted, filtered, and prepared for further processing. The thalamus acts as a kind of relay station, not only passing signals onward but also deciding which ones deserve more attention. It helps determine what will rise into awareness and what will remain in the background. This filtering is essential, for the eyes take in far more information than the brain could possibly handle at once. In this way, the brain protects us from sensory overload, keeping attention focused where it is needed. From the thalamus, visual signals travel to the primary visual cortex at the back of the brain in the occipital lobe. This region is the first major processing center, where light begins to transform into form. Neurons here are tuned to detect edges, lines, and contrasts, breaking the visual scene into elemental pieces. The brain does not see an object all at once. It sees fragments, edges, corners, colors, movements. The work of vision is to assemble these fragments into a coherent picture. This assembly is so rapid and seamless that we are never aware of the underlying steps. We open our eyes and the world appears whole. Yet behind the curtain, countless processes are piecing it together with astonishing speed. Depth perception is one of these achievements. Because the eyes are set slightly apart, each one captures a slightly different view of the world. The brain compares these two views, calculating the differences to create a sense of depth. This is why covering one eye flattens the world, making it harder to judge distance. Motion also aids in depth, as the brain interprets the shifting of objects relative to one another as a sign of spatial arrangement. Shadows, textures, and perspective all feed into this perception. Depth is not something the eyes see directly, but something the brain infers. Yet it feels immediate and natural. Color perception is another construction. Cones in the retina detect wavelengths of light, but the experience of red, blue, or green is not inherent in the light itself. It is the brain that interprets the patterns of activity from different cones and assigns them the vivid sensations we call color. The same wavelength that one person perceives as a bright blue might appear slightly different to another, and variations in genetics can shift the entire experience of color. Yet the brain holds the power to maintain constancy. A white shirt looks white, whether it is seen under the golden light of sunrise or the cool glow of artificial lamps. This stability, known as color constancy, arises from the brain's ability to compare surrounding cues and adjust perception accordingly. Movement detection is equally dependent on the brain. Certain neurons in the visual cortex are tuned to recognize motion in particular directions. These cells fire when an object moves leftward, rightward, upward, or downward across the field of view. In this way, the brain becomes sensitive not only to still images but to dynamic change. This is why even a faint flicker at the edge of vision can catch our attention. The brain prioritizes movement. For in evolutionary terms, movement often signals importance, whether it is the approach of prey, the flight of a bird, or the presence of another human being. Recognition is one of the most extraordinary achievements of the visual brain. As information flows from the primary visual cortex to higher regions, objects begin to emerge from lines and colors. Faces, in particular, are processed in specialized areas, such as the fusiform face area in the temporal lobe. This specialization allows us to recognize familiar people with remarkable speed, sometimes in less than a second. The recognition is not limited to people. It extends to objects, places, and written words. The visual brain, in this sense, is a vast library, storing countless images and constantly comparing new inputs to its archives. Every glance is both perception and memory, a blending of what we see now and what we have seen before. It is important to remember that the brain does not simply record what is out there. It interprets, adjusts, and sometimes even creates. Optical illusions reveal this clearly. Two lines of the same length may appear different depending on their surroundings. A still image may seem to ripple or move. Colors may appear brighter or darker based on contrast. These illusions occur because the brain is not a camera but a storyteller, always seeking patterns and meanings, sometimes filling in gaps or bending perception to match expectation. In daily life, this tendency serves us well, allowing rapid understanding and prediction. But it also shows that what we see is not reality itself, but the brain's construction of reality. Attention plays a powerful role in shaping what we see. The eyes may take in the entire scene, but the brain highlights certain details while ignoring others. This is why we can fail to notice something right in front of us if our attention is elsewhere. The phenomenon, known as inattentional blindness, reveals that vision is not only about light entering the eyes, but about where the mind chooses to focus. In this way, vision is as much about the brain's decisions as about the eye's abilities. The emotional brain is also closely linked to sight. Visual input often carries emotional weight, expressions on faces, scenes of beauty, or signs of danger. The amygdala, a region involved in emotional processing, interacts with the visual system, sometimes even accelerating reaction before conscious recognition. This is why we might jump at a sudden shadow before realizing it was harmless. Vision is not a detached act of observation. It is tied to survival, emotion, and memory at every level. When we close our eyes, vision does not truly stop. The brain can still generate images from memory and imagination. Dreams, for instance, are filled with visual scenes created entirely within the mind. Daydreams and mental imagery also demonstrate this, as we can picture a loved one's face or recall the layout of a familiar place without opening our eyes. The brain is capable of creating sight from within, showing that vision is not only external but also internal, a bridge between perception and imagination. To reflect on how the brain sees is to realize that vision is both simple and profound. Light enters, signals travel, the brain interprets, and the world appears. Yet behind this flow is a vast network of neurons, each performing its role, each contributing to the tapestry of sight. The brain does not merely receive the world, it shapes it, colors it, and fills it with meaning. In this sense, seeing is not just the act of looking outward, but also the act of bringing the world inward, weaving it into thought and memory, and allowing us to live in a reality that feels whole and alive. 6. Hearing. Vibrations into sound. Of all the senses, hearing is the one most deeply bound to the rhythms of time. Sight delivers an image in a single instant, but sound is stretched across moments, unfolding like a river that cannot be grasped at once but only followed as it flows. To hear is to live inside waves of vibration, waves that ripple invisibly through the air and are translated by the ear into tones, voices, and music. It is a sense that surrounds us even when we are not fully aware of it, a constant atmosphere of subtle noises, the hum of distant traffic, the rustle of leaves, the gentle rhythm of breathing. Unlike vision, which can be closed with the blink of an eye, hearing remains open, always listening, always attuned to the world around us. Sound itself is nothing more than vibration. When an object moves, it pushes against the air, creating compressions and rarefactions that travel outward as waves. These waves carry energy, not matter, transmitting the shape of the vibration through the medium of air, water, or even solid surfaces. When they reach the ear, they set into motion one of the most intricate sensory systems of the body, a system designed to capture the tiniest tremors and translate them into meaning. The ear, like the eye, is not a single structure but a series of parts working in harmony, each step of the process as delicate as it is essential. The outer ear begins the journey. The pinna, that curved and ridged structure on either side of the head, is shaped to gather sound waves and funnel them inward. Its folds help to filter and amplify certain frequencies, aiding in the ability to locate where sounds are coming from. The ear canal carries the vibrations deeper, guiding them to the eardrum, a thin, taut membrane stretched across the entrance to the middle ear. When sound waves strike the eardrum, it vibrates in rhythm with them, transforming invisible waves in the air into physical motion. From here, the middle ear takes over. Attached to the eardrum are the three smallest bones in the human body: the malleus, the incus, and the stapes, often known as the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. These bones form a delicate chain, transmitting the vibrations of the eardrum with remarkable precision. Their arrangement amplifies the sound, concentrating the energy so that it can pass into the fluid-filled inner ear. This amplification is necessary because sound travels differently through air than through fluid, and without it, much of the energy would be lost. The stapes, the final bone in the chain, presses against the oval window of the cochlea, a spiral-shaped structure that resembles a tiny seashell curled deep within the skull. The cochlea is where the magic of hearing truly unfolds. Inside its coiled chambers, fluid vibrates in response to the movements of the stapes. Along its length runs the basilar membrane, a ribbon of tissue that varies in stiffness and thickness from base to tip. This variation allows different parts of the membrane to respond to different frequencies: the base to high pitches, the tip to low ones. Resting on the basilar membrane are rows of hair cells, each topped with delicate hair-like projections known as stereocilia. As the fluid shifts, the stereocilia bend, opening tiny channels that allow ions to flow in. This bending triggers electrical signals, and these signals pass into the auditory nerve, carrying the coded message of sound to the brain. The sensitivity of this system is astonishing. The human ear can detect vibrations as small as a fraction of the width of an atom, and it can distinguish between thousands of different pitches and tones. The hair cells act like the keys of an instrument, each one tuned to a particular frequency, and together they create a vast range of auditory experience. Yet these cells are also fragile, and once damaged by loud noise, aging, or disease, they do not regenerate, leading to hearing loss. It is a reminder of both the resilience and vulnerability of the senses, a balance that must be cherished. Once the auditory nerve carries signals away from the cochlea, the brain begins its work. The signals pass through brainstem nuclei, where timing and intensity differences between the two ears are compared. This comparison allows us to locate sounds in space, determining whether they come from left or right, near or far. The signals then travel upward to the thalamus, the brain's relay center, and onward to the auditory cortex in the temporal lobe. Here, sound is interpreted, organized into patterns, and linked with memory and meaning. The brain does not simply hear, it recognizes. A certain pattern of vibrations becomes a familiar voice. A particular sequence of tones becomes a melody remembered from childhood. Even in unfamiliar sounds, the brain seeks structure, turning noise into rhythm, tone, and pattern. One of the most profound aspects of hearing is its connection to communication. Human speech is carried on waves of sound, shaped by the vocal cords, resonating through the mouth and nose, and sculpted into language by the tongue and lips. The ear is tuned not only to detect sound, but to recognize the subtle differences between phonemes, the smallest units of speech. This recognition allows us to understand meaning in conversation, even when voices are quiet or background noise is present. The ability to parse speech is one of the brain's most remarkable feats, requiring rapid and constant decoding of auditory signals. Through this sense, humans connect, share knowledge, express emotion, and pass stories from generation to generation. Hearing also connects us to music, one of the most profound forms of human experience. Music is structured vibration, organized in ways that stir emotion and memory. The brain responds to rhythm with movement, to melody with recognition, and to harmony with deep emotional resonance. Music can soothe, inspire, or bring people together in shared experience. The sense of hearing is its gateway, without which the art of sound would remain locked away. Even those who lose hearing often feel the vibrations of music through the body, a reminder that sound is not only for the ears but can be felt as rhythm and pulse throughout the whole being. Another unique quality of hearing is its persistence in sleep. While vision closes with the eyelids, hearing remains open, a sentinel guarding the night. A parent may sleep deeply but awaken at the faintest cry of an infant. The ear listens even in rest, ready to rouse the body if something important arises. This vigilance reflects the evolutionary importance of sound as an early warning system, able to signal danger long before it comes into sight. In its essence, hearing is about connection. It connects us to one another through speech and song, to the environment through the rustle of leaves and the call of birds, and to time itself through rhythm and cadence. It is both protective and enriching, guiding us away from danger and toward meaning. To hear is to live within the constant motion of the world, to let invisible waves touch the body and become experience. When we listen closely, we realize that the world is never silent. Even in the quietest room, the faint hum of blood moving through vessels, the gentle sound of breath, and the subtle ringing of neural activity remain. Hearing is both external and internal, an ongoing awareness that we carry with us always. To understand it is to appreciate the wonder of vibration turned into meaning, and to recognize that through the simple act of listening, we are bound to the rhythms of life itself. 7. The music of the brain. Sound enters the ear as vibration, passes through the intricate machinery of the cochlea, and then travels as pulses of electrical activity along the auditory nerve. Yet, it is not until these signals reach the brain that they are shaped into the experiences we know as voices, songs, or the gentle murmur of leaves in the wind. The brain is not a passive recorder of sound, but an active musician, arranging vibrations into melody and rhythm, weaving them into memory, and binding them to emotion. This is why hearing is not only about detecting noise, but about finding meaning and beauty within it. When we speak of the music of the brain, we speak of the way it transforms patterns into experiences that resonate deeply with who we are. The auditory cortex, located within the temporal lobes of the brain, is the primary stage upon which sound is transformed into perception. Here, the raw signals from the ears are laid out in a kind of map. Each region of the cortex corresponds to particular frequencies, so that the brain holds within it a miniature version of the cochlea, an echo of the basilar membrane's tuning. This tonotopic organization allows the brain to separate low from high, bass from treble, and everything in between. The arrangement is flexible, and with experience, certain areas may become more refined. For instance, musicians often show enhanced cortical responses to the tones of their instruments, evidence that the brain is sculpted by the sounds it engages with most. From this basic processing, the brain begins to assemble the layers of sound into patterns. Timing, pitch, and volume are analyzed, and from these elements emerge the recognition of speech, the flow of language, and the rise and fall of melody. This process is astonishingly fast, unfolding in fractions of a second, allowing us to understand words as they are spoken, or to recognize a familiar tune within just a few notes. Yet speed alone does not capture the experience. The brain does more than decode sound. It infuses it with significance. Emotions are closely tied to hearing, and nowhere is this clearer than in music. A sequence of tones may move us to joy, to calm, or to tears, not because of the vibrations themselves, but because of the way the brain responds. The limbic system, which governs emotion and memory, is deeply connected to auditory processing. When music plays, the amygdala, hippocampus, and other related structures are activated, weaving sound with feeling and recollection. This is why a song heard long ago can suddenly transport us back to a moment in childhood, or why certain melodies bring comfort in times of stress. The brain does not simply hear music, it lives within it, allowing sound to stir the deepest layers of self. Rhythm, too, finds its home in the brain. The basal ganglia, a group of structures involved in movement and timing, play an important role in our perception of beat. When we tap a foot, clap in time, or dance, the rhythm of sound is mirrored in the rhythm of the body. This coupling reveals how hearing and movement are intertwined, bound by the brain's ability to track and predict the flow of time. Even infants respond to rhythm, swaying and moving in ways that show the deep and natural connection between sound and motion. In this sense, the brain is not only a listener but a participant, joining with the music in a dance as old as humanity. Language occupies a special place in this symphony. To understand speech, the brain must do more than recognize tones. It must divide streams of sound into meaningful units. Phonemes are identified, syllables grouped, words recognized, and sentences understood, all in a seamless flow. Regions such as Broca's area and Wernicke's area specialize in different aspects of this process production and comprehension, but they work in harmony, supported by vast networks that span the brain. This integration allows us not only to hear words, but to grasp their meaning, to appreciate nuance, humor, and tone, and to respond in kind. Without this orchestration, sound would remain noise, never becoming the bridge of human communication that it is. The brain's musicality extends even to silence. Anticipation of sound can trigger neural activity, as when a listener waits for the resolution of a chord or the next word in a sentence. This predictive power is one of the brain's most remarkable features. It does not simply react to sound. It forecasts it, filling in gaps, smoothing over interruptions, and preparing responses before the final vibration has even arrived. This is why we can follow a conversation in a noisy room, guessing words that are partially obscured, or why music can create tension and release by playing with expectation. The brain is always listening forward, always composing the next note in its inner symphony. Another aspect of the music of the brain is its ability to adapt to different acoustic environments. In a quiet room, it can amplify subtle sounds, making faint noises audible. In a crowded space, it can focus attention on a single voice, filtering out competing signals in what is sometimes called the cocktail party effect. This adaptability requires constant recalibration, a balancing act between attention, memory, and sensory input. The brain's skill at this task is so refined that we rarely notice it, yet it is what allows us to live in a world full of overlapping sounds without being overwhelmed. Hearing loss provides a window into just how much the brain contributes to sound. When the ears fail to transmit signals, the auditory cortex does not fall silent. Instead, it often reorganizes, responding more strongly to other senses such as vision or touch. In those who learn to lip read, for instance, parts of the auditory brain may be recruited to process visual information. This plasticity shows that the brain's music is not rigid but adaptive, capable of finding harmony even when instruments are missing. Cochlear implants, devices that provide electrical stimulation directly to the auditory nerve, take advantage of this adaptability, allowing the brain to interpret artificial signals as sound. Over time, many users learn not only to detect noise but to understand speech and even appreciate music, a testament to the brain's power to find melody in the simplest of vibrations. Even in silence, the brain continues its music. Many people experience a faint ringing or buzzing in the absence of external sound, a phenomenon known as tinnitus. This is often the result of the brain generating its own signals in response to reduced input from the ears. While sometimes troubling, it also reveals the brain's persistent activity, its refusal to rest in stillness. Sound is not only external but also internal, an ongoing dialogue between perception and imagination. The music of the brain, then, is not limited to art or pleasure. It is the foundation of communication, emotion, and survival. The cry of an infant, the warning call of danger, the reassurance in a familiar voice all depend on the brain's ability to weave vibration into meaning. Music and speech are extensions of this ability, cultural forms that reflect a biological gift. To hear is to be surrounded by the ongoing song of existence, and to have a brain is to join in that song, shaping it into language, memory, and art. To reflect on this is to realize that the world we hear is not simply given to us. It is composed within us. The brain takes vibrations and turns them into voices, into laughter, into melodies that linger long after the final note has faded. It is the great composer, playing upon the instrument of the ear, conducting the symphony of life. Every sound is part of this performance, from the faintest whisper to the most thunderous crescendo. And in every moment, the music of the brain carries us, guiding us through the rhythms of the world with quiet, unending grace. 8. The vestibular sense, balance, and motion. Among the less celebrated senses, balance holds a quiet but vital place. It is not as vivid as sight, nor as emotionally stirring as hearing. Yet it is woven into every movement we make. Without it, walking would be unsteady, standing upright would be precarious, and the simple act of turning one's head would bring dizziness. The vestibular sense, often called the sense of balance and motion, operates so steadily in the background that we rarely think of it until it falters. Yet its presence is essential, guiding us through space, orienting us against gravity, and allowing our bodies to move with confidence and grace. The vestibular system resides within the inner ear, close to the cochlea where hearing takes place. It is a compact and intricate structure, built around two main components: the semicircular canals and the otolith organs. Together, they form a system of fluid-filled chambers that detect motion and position. Though small, their function is profound, for they allow the body to sense not only that it is moving, but how it is moving, whether spinning, tilting, accelerating, or slowing down. The semicircular canals are three curved tubes arranged at right angles to one another, like the three dimensions of space. Each canal detects rotation in a particular plane, side to side, up and down, or tilting sideways. When the head moves, fluid within the canals lags behind due to inertia, bending hair cells that line the canals. These hair cells are the same type of receptor found in the cochlea, finely tuned to detect motion. As they bend, they generate electrical signals, sending messages to the brain about the direction and speed of rotation. The arrangement of the canals means that no matter how the head turns, there is always a canal aligned to detect it. The otolith organs, known as the utricle and saccule, detect linear motion and the pull of gravity. Within them lie tiny crystals called otoconia, resting on a gelatinous layer. When the head tilts or accelerates, these crystals shift, pulling on the hair cells beneath them. The result is a signal that tells the brain not only that movement has occurred, but whether it is forward, backward, upward, or downward. This system explains why we can feel the difference between standing still, riding in an elevator, or tilting our head to one side. Gravity itself becomes a constant reference point, always pulling, always reminding the body which way is down. The signals from the vestibular system do not act alone. They integrate with vision and proprioception, forming a network of sensory information that guides balance. Vision tells us where we are in space by showing the position of the horizon, objects, and our own body relative to the environment. Proprioception tells us where our limbs are, whether our feet are on solid ground, and how our muscles are stretched. The vestibular system provides the third element, confirming the orientation of the head and the acceleration of movement. Together, they create a seamless sense of stability. When one system is disrupted, the others often compensate. This is why closing the eyes makes it harder to balance, or why standing on one foot feels more stable when we can look at a fixed point. The importance of the vestibular system is most obvious when it falters. Dizziness, vertigo, and motion sickness all arise from disruptions in balance signals. Motion sickness, for example, occurs when the vestibular system and vision disagree. Imagine reading a book while riding in a car. The vestibular system feels the motion of acceleration and turning, but the eyes, fixed on the page, see stillness. The brain receives conflicting messages, and the result is discomfort, nausea, or dizziness. Similarly, vertigo can arise when the vestibular system sends distorted signals, making the world appear to spin or tilt, even when it is still. These conditions remind us of how much we depend on balance, and how disorienting its loss can be. The brain devotes significant resources to interpreting vestibular input. Signals travel to the brainstem, where they influence reflexes that keep the eyes steady during movement. This reflex, called the vestibulo-ocular reflex, is why we can walk or run without the world appearing to blur. The reflex stabilizes vision by moving the eyes in the opposite direction of head movement, ensuring that what we see remains sharp. Without it, every step would shake our vision, making clear sight impossible. The vestibular system also communicates with the cerebellum, a structure at the back of the brain responsible for coordination and balance. Here, signals are integrated with information from muscles and joints, fine-tuning posture and movement. Balance plays a central role in daily life, even in ways we may not notice. Every time we rise from a chair, step onto uneven ground, or turn quickly to look behind us, the vestibular system is at work. Athletes rely on it for precision, dancers for fluidity, and acrobats for control. Even simple tasks such as pouring water, carrying groceries, or bending down to tie a shoe require balance to remain smooth and effortless. Children develop their vestibular system gradually, learning to crawl, stand, and walk as the brain refines its ability to coordinate motion. With age, balance can weaken, making falls more likely and movement less steady. This is why exercises that strengthen balance are encouraged for older adults, helping to keep the vestibular system sharp and responsive. Balance is also deeply tied to the sense of orientation and presence. When we stand upright and feel steady, there is a quiet assurance, a feeling of being grounded. When balance falters, the world feels uncertain, and the body becomes anxious. This connection between balance and emotion is not accidental. The vestibular system communicates with regions of the brain involved in arousal and stress, meaning that dizziness can trigger unease or fear. Conversely, the calm of steady balance supports a sense of safety and relaxation. In this way, the vestibular sense is not only about physical motion but about emotional stability as well. Even in stillness, the vestibular system is active. Gravity is always present, always pulling downward, and the otolith organs are always sensing it. The brain is constantly aware of orientation, whether lying flat, sitting upright, or standing tall. This quiet awareness is why we can close our eyes and still know we are upright, or tilt our head back and feel the difference immediately. Gravity provides a constant rhythm, and the vestibular system is the interpreter of that rhythm. When we reflect on the vestibular sense, it becomes clear that balance is not just another sense, but a foundation upon which others rest. Without it, movement is uncertain, vision is unstable, and orientation is lost. With it, the body moves gracefully, the eyes see clearly, and the mind feels secure. It is a sense that rarely calls attention to itself, yet it supports nearly everything we do. In essence, the vestibular system is the body's compass and stabilizer, a silent guardian that ensures each step is steady, each turn is measured, and each moment of motion is guided with precision. To live with balance is to live in harmony with gravity, to move confidently through space, and to rest in the quiet assurance that the body knows where it is. Though often hidden in the background of awareness, the vestibular sense is one of the most profound gifts of perception, a reminder that even the simplest act of standing upright is an achievement of remarkable coordination. 9. Touch, the language of the skin. The sense of touch is the most ancient and perhaps the most universal of all the human senses. Long before eyes evolved to perceive light or ears to hear sound, living beings responded to contact with their surroundings. To touch is to meet the world directly, without distance, without the intermediary of waves or reflections. It is the first sense to develop in the womb, as the forming nervous system begins to register the contact of skin with the surrounding amniotic fluid. From that earliest stage, touch becomes the constant companion of life, remaining active until the very end, a faithful bridge between body and world. The organ of touch is not a single structure but the entire surface of the body. The skin, stretching from head to toe, is the largest sensory organ, covering us in a continuous field of receptors. Every square centimeter contains a network of nerve endings specialized to detect pressure, vibration, texture, temperature, and pain. These receptors are not evenly distributed. Some areas, such as the fingertips, lips, and face, are densely packed with touch sensors, while others, like the back or thighs, are less sensitive. This distribution reflects the importance of different regions for exploration and interaction. The fingertips, capable of reading Braille or distinguishing the finest textures, reveal how delicately tuned the sense of touch can be. Touch begins with mechanoreceptors, specialized cells that respond to physical deformation of the skin. Some detect light pressure, allowing us to feel the brush of a feather or the texture of fabric. Others respond to deep pressure, letting us sense the weight of objects or the firmness of a handshake. Certain receptors are tuned to vibration, detecting the rapid oscillations of a phone buzzing or a tool in use. Still others are sensitive to stretch, helping the brain map how the skin moves across the body. Each receptor type contributes its own piece of information, and together they create the rich tapestry of tactile experience. Temperature adds another dimension to touch. Thermoreceptors in the skin respond to changes in heat and cold, warning us of extremes, while also providing the comfort of warmth or the refreshment of coolness. They are relative sensors, responding not only to absolute temperature but also to change, which is why water may feel warm at first but gradually seem cooler as the body adjusts. The sense of temperature helps us adapt to our environment, guiding behavior in ways both subtle and profound, seeking shade on a hot day, reaching for a blanket on a cold night, or savoring the balance of heat in food and drink. Pain, though often unwelcome, is another essential part of touch. Nociceptors are nerve endings specialized to detect harmful stimuli, such as sharp edges, extreme temperatures, or tissue damage. Their signals are warnings, demanding attention to prevent further injury. While pain can be uncomfortable, it is also protective. Those born without the ability to feel pain face constant danger, for without this warning system, they may not withdraw from harm. Pain is the body's urgent voice, reminding us of our limits and urging caution. In the language of touch, it is the exclamation mark that ensures survival. The pathways of touch begin in the skin but travel deep into the nervous system. Signals from receptors pass into peripheral nerves, through the spinal cord, and upward to the brain. Along the way, they may trigger reflexes, allowing rapid withdrawal from harm even before conscious awareness arises. Higher in the brain, the somatosensory cortex receives and maps these signals. This cortical map mirrors the body, with each region corresponding to a different part of the skin. The map is distorted, however, because sensitivity is not uniform. Hands, lips, and face occupy disproportionately large regions of the cortex, reflecting their rich supply of receptors. The result is a homunculus, a mental representation of the body in which some parts are enlarged to match their sensory importance. Touch is not only about the external world, it is also a key part of social connection. Gentle contact releases hormones such as oxytocin, which promote bonding and trust. The comforting hand on a shoulder, the hug of a loved one, or the soothing stroke of a parent calms the nervous system, lowering stress and fostering security. This social dimension of touch is so powerful that its absence can cause harm. Studies of infants in orphanages once revealed that lack of touch, even when food and shelter were provided, led to developmental delays and emotional distress. Touch nourishes not only the body but the mind, offering reassurance that we are connected to others. Texture, one of the most refined aspects of touch, allows us to distinguish between surfaces, smooth and rough, soft and hard, slippery and sticky. The ability to perceive texture is crucial in daily life, identifying objects, judging materials, and performing delicate tasks. Our fingertips are finely tuned to these differences, capable of detecting ridges smaller than a micron. This precision allows blind individuals to read Braille, converting raised dots into language. In these moments, touch becomes not only perception but communication, a direct translation of contact into meaning. The emotional qualities of touch extend beyond comfort to pleasure and enjoyment. The warmth of sun on the skin, the softness of fabric, the gentle massage of muscles. These are experiences of touch that enrich life. Even simple acts such as holding a warm mug or resting in cool sheets carry emotional weight. The brain integrates tactile signals with emotion, creating associations that shape memory and preference. A particular texture may remind us of home, a certain warmth of safety, a gentle pressure of care. Through touch, memory, and sensation become entwined. Touch also guides movement. Without it, proprioception would be incomplete, and objects would slip from our grasp. The skin provides constant feedback about grip, pressure, and position, allowing adjustments in real time. When we hold a pen, touch tells us if it is slipping. When we carry a glass of water, touch tells us how tightly to hold it. These subtle adjustments happen continuously, often without conscious thought. Touch is the silent partner of movement, ensuring precision and control. When touch is disrupted, the world becomes less certain. Numbness, caused by nerve injury or illness, removes the quiet feedback that guides action. Without it, tasks become clumsy and balance is harder to maintain. This reveals just how much we rely on the sense of touch, even when we do not notice it. Its absence is felt not only physically but emotionally, for touch is one of the most grounding and reassuring of senses. In reflecting on touch, we see that it is both physical and emotional, protective and connective, practical and pleasurable. It anchors us in the world, keeps us safe from harm, connects us to others, and enriches daily life with texture and warmth. It is the sense that makes us aware of the boundary between self and environment, yet also the sense that allows that boundary to be crossed in gestures of comfort and care. Touch is the most constant of companions, present in every moment, and the most human, for through it we find both safety and connection. In essence, touch is the language of the skin, a language spoken without words, understood without translation, and felt in every moment of life. It is a reminder that the world is not distant but always in contact, always pressing gently against us, always shaping our experience through the quiet signals of the skin. To live with touch is to live in dialogue with the environment, to know the warmth of presence, and to carry within us the reassurance that we are connected to the world and to one another. 10. Temperature and pain. The senses of temperature and pain are often grouped together because they serve as guardians of the body, always alert to changes in the environment, and always ready to warn us when balance is threatened. They are not decorative senses like vision, which paints the world in color, or hearing, which fills life with music. Instead, they are protective, practical, and absolutely necessary. Without them, the body would be vulnerable, unable to recognize danger or respond to extremes. While they may not always bring comfort, indeed, pain can be sharp and unpleasant. They are essential to survival. They remind us of limits, guide us away from harm, and help us maintain the delicate balance that life requires. The perception of temperature begins in the skin, where specialized receptors known as thermoreceptors quietly monitor warmth and coolness. These receptors are tuned not to absolute values of heat, but to changes. A hand placed into warm water feels the difference instantly, but after a time, the sensation fades as the receptors adapt. This adaptability is useful, allowing us to notice new changes rather than becoming overwhelmed by constancy. There are two broad categories of thermoreceptors, those that respond to heat and those that respond to cold. Together, they create a dynamic map of temperature across the body's surface, informing the brain about the environment and prompting appropriate responses. The sensitivity of this system is remarkable. The human skin can detect temperature differences as small as a fraction of a degree. Such precision is vital, for it allows us to sense a fire before we are too close, to find shelter when the air grows too cold, and to seek balance between the extremes. Temperature perception is not only external but also internal. Deep within the body, sensors monitor core temperature, sending signals to the brain's hypothalamus, the control center of homeostasis. If the body grows too warm, the hypothalamus triggers sweating and dilation of blood vessels to release heat. If the body grows too cold, it prompts shivering and constriction of vessels to conserve warmth. These automatic responses maintain stability, ensuring that the body's internal temperature stays within the narrow range required for life. Pain, too, arises from specialized receptors, nociceptors that respond to potentially harmful stimuli. These receptors are scattered throughout the skin, muscles, joints, and even some internal organs. When tissue is damaged or threatened, nociceptors send signals that are interpreted by the brain as pain. Like temperature, Pain is not always constant, but can vary in intensity, duration, and quality. It may be sharp and sudden, like a pinprick, or dull and lingering, like the ache of inflammation. Each type of pain serves a purpose. Sharp pain demands immediate attention and withdrawal from danger. Dull, persistent pain encourages rest and healing. In both cases, the message is clear. Something is wrong, and the body must respond. It is easy to think of pain as an enemy, something to be avoided at all costs. Yet those who are born without the ability to feel pain face immense challenges. Without this warning system, they may not notice injuries, burns, or infections until they become severe. Pain, though often uncomfortable, is a signal of protection. It is the body's way of drawing a boundary, reminding us of our vulnerability and urging us to act with care. The pathways of pain and temperature are distinct yet interconnected. Both begin at receptors in the body and travel along nerve fibers into the spinal cord. There, the signals are transmitted upward to the brain, where they are processed and given meaning. The thalamus acts as a relay, directing information to regions such as the somatosensory cortex, which identifies the location and quality of the sensation, and the limbic system, which attaches emotional weight to it. This dual processing explains why pain is both physical and emotional, why it can feel not only sharp or dull, but distressing or exhausting. It is not just a signal of tissue damage, but an experience that engages the whole being. The perception of temperature also interacts with emotion. A warm touch can feel comforting, while a chill can bring unease. These associations are so deep that they appear in language. We speak of warm personalities and cold receptions, of heated arguments and cool tempers. The link between physical temperature and emotional tone reflects the integration of sensory and affective processing in the brain. Warmth, in both senses, signals safety and closeness. Coldness signals distance or danger. In this way, the sense of temperature influences not only survival, but social life and emotional experience. Pain, too, is deeply shaped by context. The same stimulus may feel more or less painful depending on attention, expectation, or mood. Athletes may continue playing through injuries, their focus overriding the body's warning. Soldiers may not notice wounds until after battle. Conversely, anxiety or fear can heighten pain, making mild discomfort feel severe. The brain's modulation of pain is evident in the release of endorphins, natural chemicals that reduce pain and promote well-being. These endogenous opioids are part of the body's own pharmacy, capable of dulling sensation when survival demands perseverance. Chronic pain presents another dimension. Unlike acute pain, which is tied to injury, chronic pain persists long after healing or arises without clear cause. It may involve ongoing signals from damaged nerves, or it may result from the brain's circuits becoming sensitized, interpreting normal inputs as painful. This condition can be debilitating, affecting sleep, mood, and daily life. It demonstrates how pain is not only a protective signal, but also a complex experience that can persist beyond its original purpose. Understanding chronic pain requires acknowledging the interplay between body, brain, and emotion, and how deeply they are entwined. The absence of temperature sensation also has consequences. Those who cannot feel heat or cold are at risk of burns or frostbite, unaware of danger until damage occurs. In daily life, temperature guides countless behaviors: adjusting clothing, seeking shade, drinking water, or lighting a fire. It provides the constant background knowledge of environment, allowing the body to maintain equilibrium. Without it, survival would be far more precarious. Even small experiences remind us of the richness of these senses. The comfort of holding a warm cup on a cold day, the relief of cool water against the skin, the warning sting of heat too close to fire. Each is a reminder of the body's dialogue with the environment. Pain and temperature are not only protective but also part of the texture of experience. They shape memory and meaning, linking sensations with places, times, and emotions. A warm evening breeze may remind us of safety and belonging. The ache of overused muscles may recall effort and accomplishment. Pain and temperature shape life as surely as color and sound, though their role is more protective than decorative. To live with these senses is to live in awareness of limits, guided by signals that protect and sustain. They are the body's teachers, reminding us that we are vulnerable, that the world holds extremes, and that balance is precious, though often unwelcome, especially when pain is sharp or illness lingers. These senses are companions that ensure survival. They are the silent alarms of the body, always watching, always ready to alert us when change becomes danger. In essence, temperature and pain are the guardians of the senses, not designed for beauty, but for preservation. They remind us that comfort is fragile, that balance must be maintained, and that the body's well-being depends on constant vigilance. To feel warmth is to know safety. To feel pain is to know danger. Together, they create a language of caution and care, guiding us through the world with signals that are immediate, insistent, and ultimately life-sustaining. 11. Taste. The map of the tongue. Taste is one of the most intimate of the senses, for it is the one that requires us to take the world into ourselves. Light can be observed from a distance. Sound can travel through the air. Touch can be felt upon the surface of the skin. But taste demands closeness. To taste something, it must enter the body, placed upon the tongue where the receptors of flavor reside. In this way, taste is both a sense of enjoyment and a sense of protection. It allows us to savor sweetness, to enjoy the richness of a meal, to delight in the harmony of flavors, yet it also warns us of bitterness, sourness, or spoilage, guiding us away from substances that may harm us. Taste is thus a gatekeeper at the very entrance to the body, offering both pleasure and caution in each sensation. The surface of the tongue is covered in small bumps known as papillae, which give it its slightly rough texture. Within many of these papillae lie the taste buds, clusters of sensory cells that detect the chemicals dissolved in food and drink. Each taste bud contains between 50 and 100 receptor cells, arranged like a tiny organ of perception. When molecules from food interact with these cells, they trigger signals that travel to the brain, where they are interpreted as taste. The number of taste buds varies between individuals, and this variation contributes to differences in taste sensitivity. Some people, often called super tasters, have an unusually high density of taste buds, making flavors more intense, sometimes even overwhelming. Others may have fewer, experiencing flavors more mildly. For many years, it was thought that different parts of the tongue were responsible for different tastes: sweet at the tip, sour at the sides, bitter at the back. This tongue map became widely known, appearing in textbooks and classrooms. Yet modern science has shown that this idea is overly simplistic. In truth, all regions of the tongue that contain taste buds can detect all 5 primary tastes: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. Each taste bud contains a mixture of receptor types, and together they allow the tongue to perceive the full spectrum of flavor. While some areas may be slightly more sensitive to certain tastes, the tongue is not divided into separate zones, but is instead a unified organ of taste. Sweetness signals energy, for sugars are a rich source of fuel. The attraction to sweet flavors is nearly universal, present even in infants who have never encountered sugar before. It is nature's way of guiding the body toward nourishment. Saltiness reflects the presence of minerals, particularly sodium, which is vital for fluid balance and nerve function. The craving for salt ensures that the body maintains the proper levels of these essential elements. Sourness often indicates acidity, which in small amounts may be refreshing, but in excess can signal spoilage. Bitterness is frequently a warning sign, for many toxic compounds in plants are bitter, and sensitivity to this taste helps protect against harm. Umami, the savory taste first described in Japan, reflects the presence of amino acids, such as glutamate, the building blocks of protein. It is the taste of richness, found in broths, meats, cheeses, and fermented foods. Together, these 5 tastes form the foundation of flavor, guiding choices that balance nutrition and safety. Taste does not act alone. Much of what we call flavor is actually a combination of taste and smell. When we eat, volatile molecules rise from food into the nasal cavity, where olfactory receptors detect them. This retronasal smell combines with signals from the tongue, creating the complexity of flavor. Without smell, taste is limited to the 5 basic categories. This is why food seems bland during a cold when the nose is blocked. Touch also contributes through sensations of texture, temperature, and spiciness. The burn of chili peppers, for example, is not a taste but the activation of pain receptors, yet it is integrated into the overall experience of flavor. In this way, taste is not an isolated sense but part of a symphony, blending with smell and touch to create the richness of eating. The journey of taste signals begins on the tongue, but quickly travels inward. Nerves carry the signals to the brainstem, where they converge before being relayed to the thalamus, and then to the gustatory cortex in the insula and frontal lobe. Here, taste is consciously experienced. At the same time, signals are sent to the limbic system, linking taste with emotion and memory. This explains why certain flavors evoke strong feelings, why a familiar meal can bring comfort, or why a single taste can transport us back to childhood. Taste is not only chemical detection, it is woven into the deepest layers of memory and identity. Culture plays a profound role in shaping taste. While the receptors are universal, preferences are learned. A food that is considered a delicacy in one part of the world may seem unappealing in another. Bitter vegetables, spicy dishes, or fermented flavors may be rejected in childhood yet embraced in adulthood as exposure changes perception. Repeated tasting can soften aversion, while positive experiences create associations that enhance enjoyment. In this way, taste is not fixed but fluid, shaped by culture, experience, and memory. The importance of taste extends beyond pleasure. It influences nutrition, health, and survival. A strong preference for sweetness can lead to overconsumption of sugar, with consequences for health. Sensitivity to bitterness can influence which vegetables are eaten, affecting diet. Loss of taste, whether from illness or aging, can reduce appetite and nutrition, leading to weakness or weight loss. These effects reveal how closely taste is tied to well-being, guiding choices that shape both pleasure and health. At its heart, taste is also about connection. Sharing meals is one of the most ancient forms of human bonding. Families gather around food, cultures celebrate with feasts, and friendships are strengthened at tables. The pleasure of taste is magnified in company, becoming not only a personal experience but a communal one. The memory of meals often lingers longer than the memory of events, for taste imprints itself deeply, linked with the people and places that surround it. To reflect on taste is to recognize its dual nature. It is both biological and cultural, protective and pleasurable, individual and communal. It is a sense that begins with molecules on the tongue but expands into memory, meaning, and connection. It reminds us that the simplest act of eating is not only about survival, but about joy, identity, and belonging. In essence, taste is the body's first judge of what is safe and nourishing, yet it is also the source of one of life's greatest pleasures. It guides us to energy, warns us of danger, and fills our days with flavor. Through taste, the world becomes not only something we see and hear, but something we savor, something we take into ourselves and transform into experience. To taste is to live at the edge of the body and the world, where chemistry becomes sensation, and sensation becomes meaning. 12. Smell, memory and emotion. Among the human senses, smell is perhaps the most mysterious and evocative. It is less sharp than sight, less constant than touch, and less deliberate than hearing. Yet it has a power that can reach deeper than any of them. A single fragrance can bring forth memories, long thought forgotten, carrying us instantly to another place and time. The aroma of bread baking may recall childhood kitchens. The scent of rain on earth may bring back summers past. The faintest whiff of perfume may stir feelings of love or loss. Smell bypasses words and logic, speaking directly to memory and emotion. To explore it is to explore one of the most ancient and intimate connections between body, mind, and world. Smell begins in the nose, where air carries with it invisible molecules released by substances around us. These molecules are small enough to drift, to travel unseen, and when they enter the nasal cavity, they encounter the olfactory epithelium, a patch of specialized tissue high inside the nose. Here lie millions of olfactory receptor neurons, each equipped with proteins that can bind to particular molecular shapes. When a molecule fits into a receptor, like a key into a lock, it triggers a signal that travels along the neuron to the brain. Unlike vision, which relies on just 3 types of receptors for color, smell involves hundreds of different receptors, each tuned to a range of molecules. This diversity allows humans to distinguish thousands of odors, from the sweetness of flowers to the sharpness of smoke, from the freshness of pine to the pungency of spices. The signals from these receptors converge in the olfactory bulb, a structure at the base of the brain just above the nasal cavity. Here, patterns of activation are organized into a kind of map, with each smell creating its own unique signature of activity. These patterns are then sent directly to brain regions involved in memory and emotion, such as the hippocampus and amygdala. This direct connection is unusual. Other senses pass first through the thalamus, the brain's central relay station, before reaching higher centers. Smell, however, takes a more direct path, bypassing the thalamus and moving straight into the limbic system. This is why smell is so deeply tied to memory and feeling, why a scent can evoke emotion instantly, without conscious thought. The emotional power of smell is evident in everyday life. The scent of a familiar person can bring comfort and reassurance. The fragrance of certain flowers can calm, while sharp or unpleasant odors can trigger disgust. Cultural traditions make use of this power. Incense in temples, perfumes in ceremonies, and aromatic herbs in rituals all rely on the ability of smell to shape mood and meaning. Even in modern life, industries built around fragrance, perfume, food, cleaning products rely on the way smells influence perception and preference. Smell is not only a biological sense but also a cultural one, woven into the fabric of daily experience. Smell also plays a role in survival. It warns of danger through the detection of smoke, gas, or spoiled food. It guides appetite, making meals appealing through aroma. It even influences social interaction, as humans, like many animals, are subtly affected by body odors and pheromones, chemical signals that can convey information about health, emotion, or genetic compatibility. Though less obvious in humans than in other species, these cues still shape behavior, often beneath conscious awareness. The sensitivity of smell varies widely among individuals. Some people are acutely aware of subtle odors, while others barely notice them. Sensitivity can also change with age, health, or hormonal state. Loss of smell, known as anosmia, can have profound effects. Without it, food loses much of its flavor. Appetite may diminish, and the emotional richness of life may fade. People with anosmia often report a sense of disconnection, as if a layer of the world has gone missing. This reveals how deeply smell contributes to experience, even if it often works in the background. Like taste, smell is shaped by culture and memory. Foods that smell appetizing in one culture may seem strange in another, reflecting differences in familiarity and learning. Childhood experiences strongly influence preferences, creating lasting associations between certain smells and feelings of comfort or dislike. This is why the scent of a particular dish may feel like home to one person but unfamiliar to another. Smell, in this way, is both universal and deeply individual, a blend of biology and personal history. The connection between smell and memory has been studied extensively, and it reveals a unique power. Memories triggered by smell are often more vivid and emotional than those triggered by sight or sound. They seem to carry not only the image of the past but the feeling of it, transporting the person back to the original moment. This phenomenon, sometimes called the Proust effect, after the writer Marcel Proust, who described such an experience in his work, demonstrates the unusual strength of olfactory memory. The direct link between smell and the limbic system explains this effect, but to those who experience it, it feels like magic, the sudden return of the past through the simple act of smelling. Smell also contributes to our sense of place. Environments have distinctive odors: the salty air of the sea, the resinous scent of forests, the dry dust of summer fields, the metallic sharpness of cities. These olfactory landscapes are part of how we recognize where we are, often without noticing. Travelers often remark upon the particular scent of a country or city, a sensory signature that lingers in memory. This spatial quality of smell makes it not only a personal sense but also a geographical one, linking perception with environment. Even in dreams, smell sometimes appears, though less commonly than sight or sound. Yet when it does, it can be strikingly real, reminding us that the brain's olfactory system is capable of conjuring sensation from memory alone. The imagination of smell is less developed than the imagination of vision, but it exists nonetheless, tied again to memory and emotion. The fragility of smell becomes apparent in its loss. Illness, injury, or aging can diminish or erase it, and those who experience this loss often speak of an emptiness, a flattening of the world. Without smell, food is dull, environments are less distinct, and the emotional richness of daily life is diminished. This shows how essential smell is, not only for survival but for joy, identity, and connection. In reflecting on smell, we find that it is both subtle and profound. It does not dominate like sight, yet it reaches deeper, connecting directly with memory and feeling. It protects, guides, comforts, and warns. It shapes culture, identity, and experience in ways both obvious and hidden. It reminds us that perception is not only about clarity but about depth, not only about information but about meaning. In essence, smell is the sense that binds past to present, body to memory, emotion to perception. It is the whisper of the world that lingers long after the moment has passed, the invisible thread that connects us to places, people, and experiences. To smell is to live in a world enriched with layers of memory and emotion, to move through an atmosphere not only of air but of meaning, and to carry within us the most intimate of connections between the senses and the soul. 13. Flavor, the symphony of taste and smell. When we sit down to enjoy a meal, what we call flavor rises before us in its fullness, rich and layered, more than any single sense alone could provide. It is not simply taste, nor only smell, nor only texture. Instead, flavor is the blending of several senses, a symphony in which each instrument contributes its part to the whole. The tongue plays its melody of sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. The nose adds harmony with the countless aromas carried upward from food. Touch contributes rhythm through texture and temperature. Even sound plays a subtle role, as the crisp snap of a cracker or the fizz of a sparkling drink becomes part of the experience. Flavor, then, is not one sense but many, converging in the brain to create the illusion of a single, unified perception. The journey of flavor begins with taste. Molecules dissolve in saliva and interact with the receptor cells of taste buds, producing the familiar sensations that guide us toward nourishment and away from harm. Sweetness offers energy. Saltiness provides essential minerals. Sourness warns of acidity. Bitterness signals caution. And umami speaks of protein and richness. Yet these 5 categories alone would make food bland and repetitive. It is smell, working in concert with taste, that expands this limited palate into thousands of flavors. As we chew, volatile compounds are released from the food and travel through the back of the throat into the nasal cavity. This pathway, known as retronasal olfaction, is different from the orthonasal olfaction that occurs when we sniff through the nose, yet the receptors are the same. The brain does not distinguish sharply between them. It blends them together, allowing aromas to become part of taste itself. This is why a strawberry tastes so different from a blueberry, even though their tastes on the tongue may be quite similar. The subtle differences arise from the bouquet of aromatic compounds, which combine with the basic categories of taste to produce distinct flavors. Texture, too, plays its role. The crispness of a fresh apple, the creaminess of cheese, the chewiness of bread, the effervescence of soda, each contributes not to taste itself, but to the perception of flavor as a whole. The tongue and mouth contain mechanoreceptors that detect pressure and movement, while thermoreceptors register temperature. Spices like chili add yet another layer, activating pain receptors that create the sensation of heat, while compounds like menthol cool the mouth by stimulating cold receptors. These signals are not tastes in the strict sense, but they merge seamlessly into the experience of flavor, adding complexity and variety. The brain receives these diverse signals from tongue, nose, and skin, and it does what it always does. It weaves them together into a single perception. The orbitofrontal cortex, a region near the front of the brain, is particularly important in this integration. Here, taste and smell converge with texture and temperature, and from this convergence arises the experience of flavor. It is not a property of the food itself, but of the brain's interpretation, a creation of perception that feels whole and vivid. Memory and culture shape flavor as well. A particular combination of tastes and smells may be familiar and comforting to one person, strange and unappealing to another. Spices that define the cuisine of one region may seem overwhelming to those unaccustomed to them. Flavors are not only chemical but learned, tied to childhood, to culture, and to tradition. A single dish may carry with it the memory of family gatherings, holidays, or journeys, and this memory becomes part of the flavor itself. What we perceive on the tongue and in the nose is inseparable from what we carry in the heart and mind. The connection between flavor and emotion is powerful. The first sip of warm soup on a cold day brings comfort, not only because of its taste and warmth, but because of the associations it carries. The sweetness of a dessert may bring joy. The bitterness of coffee may bring alertness. The savoriness of a shared meal may bring togetherness. Flavor binds us to the present moment, yet also links us to the past, creating continuity across time. This is why recipes are passed down through generations, why certain dishes are said to taste like home, and why meals are often the center of celebration and ritual. The science of flavor reveals its complexity, but it does not diminish its wonder. Chemists can identify the molecules that create the aroma of chocolate, the sour tang of citrus, or the earthy richness of mushrooms. Neuroscientists can trace the pathways by which these signals travel from receptors to the brain. Yet none of this can fully capture the subjective experience of flavor, the way it fills us with satisfaction, memory, and meaning. Flavor belongs to the realm where biology and culture meet, where molecules become meals, and where perception becomes pleasure. One of the most striking demonstrations of the interplay between senses is the loss of smell during illness. A person with a blocked nose may still detect sweetness, saltiness, and bitterness, but food suddenly seems flat and flavorless. The realization that flavor depends so heavily on smell comes sharply in these moments, reminding us of how much the nose contributes to what we think of as taste. Similarly, when texture changes, when bread goes stale, when fruit loses its crispness, the flavor seems altered, even if the chemical composition remains the same. Flavor is not fixed in the food, but constructed in the mind. Even sound, though subtle, influences flavor. The crunch of fresh chips or the fizz of carbonated drinks enhances the perception of freshness and liveliness. Experiments have shown that altering the sound of chewing can change the perception of crispness, proving that the brain incorporates auditory cues into the experience of flavor. Eating is, in truth, a multisensory act, involving sight, smell, taste, touch, and sound all at once. Sight also contributes strongly. The color of food sets expectation, shaping what we believe we will taste. A bright red liquid may seem sweeter than a clear one, even if they are identical. The presentation of food, the arrangement on a plate, the hues and contrasts, all influence perception. This shows again that flavor is not only in the tongue and nose, but in the mind, where all senses converge to create the whole. Flavor is not only about pleasure, it also guides nutrition. Cravings for certain flavors often reflect bodily needs, drawing us toward salt when sodium is low, or toward protein-rich foods when the body requires building blocks. While culture and habit strongly shape preferences, biology still whispers beneath, using flavor as a guide. In this sense, flavor is not only an indulgence but a tool of survival, balancing enjoyment with necessity. In essence, flavor is the great symphony of the senses, blending signals from tongue, nose, skin, eyes, and ears into a single harmonious perception. It is a reminder that the senses do not work in isolation but in concert, creating experiences that are more than the sum of their parts. To taste is not only to detect chemicals, it is to enter into a dialogue between body, mind, memory, and culture. Flavor nourishes us, not only with energy, but with meaning, joy, and connection. To reflect on flavor is to realize that every meal is more than sustenance. It is an act of perception, a moment where the senses join together to create richness from the simplest of elements. Each bite is a reminder that life is layered and interconnected, that pleasure and protection coexist, and that the body and mind are never separate but always working together. Flavor is the poetry of the senses, a song played on the instruments of taste and smell, carried by memory, and resonating with the deep rhythms of life. 14. Proprioception, the sense of self in space. Among the many senses that guide human life, proprioception is one of the quietest, yet one of the most important. It is not as vivid as sight, nor as evocative as smell, nor as emotionally charged as touch. It works in the background, largely unnoticed. Yet without it, our daily movements would become clumsy and uncertain. Proprioception is the sense that tells us where our body is in space, the hidden awareness of the position of our limbs, the angle of our joints. It is sometimes called the sixth sense. It is one of several that extend beyond the famous five. To walk across a room without watching our feet, to reach for a cup without staring at our hand, to close our eyes and still touch our nose, all of this depends on proprioception. The word itself comes from the Latin proprius, meaning one's own, and capio, meaning to take or to grasp. Proprioception is, in essence, the body's grasp of itself, the inner sense of ownership and awareness. While vision shows us the world outside, proprioception tells us about the body within that world. It is an anchor that keeps us oriented, balanced, and in control of our movements. Without it, the simplest actions would require constant visual monitoring. Imagine trying to walk by staring at your feet with each step, or to button a shirt while keeping your eyes fixed on your hands. Proprioception frees us from this burden, allowing the body to move fluidly and unconsciously through space. The machinery of proprioception lies in receptors scattered throughout muscles, tendons, and joints. Muscle spindles, tiny sensory organs within the fibers of muscle, detect changes in length and stretch. They tell the brain how much a muscle is extended, allowing it to adjust tension and movement accordingly. Tendon organs, located at the junctions where muscles attach to bones, detect force and pressure, informing the brain of how much load is being carried. Joint receptors, embedded in ligaments and capsules, report on the angle and position of joints, providing feedback about the orientation of limbs. Together, these receptors send a continuous stream of information to the nervous system, creating an internal map of the body's posture and movement. This map is dynamic, constantly updated with every shift and adjustment. It is why we can walk across uneven ground, adapting each step without thinking. It is why we can type on a keyboard without looking at the keys, our fingers finding their places through memory and proprioceptive feedback. It is why athletes can perform complex maneuvers, dancers can leap and spin with precision, and musicians can play instruments with closed eyes. Proprioception allows movement to become graceful, coordinated, and efficient. The signals of proprioception travel along sensory nerves to the spinal cord and up to the brain. They reach the cerebellum, which fine-tunes movement and balance, and the parietal lobe, where they contribute to the body's sense of position. This awareness is not usually conscious. We do not think about the exact angle of our elbow or the precise stretch of a calf muscle, yet the brain knows these things at all times, using them to guide action. Only when proprioception is disrupted do we become aware of how much we rely on it. Loss of proprioception can occur through injury, illness, or neurological disease. Those who suffer from it often describe the world as uncertain, as though their bodies no longer obey their intentions. Without proprioceptive feedback, they must rely heavily on vision, watching their limbs to ensure correct movement. Closing their eyes, even for a moment, may cause them to lose balance or drop objects. Such cases reveal how deeply proprioception underlies the fluidity of daily life, how it supports the sense of self in ways that usually remain hidden. Even in health, We sometimes become aware of proprioception when it falters temporarily. After sitting still for a long time, a limb may fall asleep, its nerves compressed so that signals are dulled. The tingling that follows as sensation returns is partly proprioceptive, the body reawakening its awareness of itself. Alcohol and fatigue can also impair proprioception, leading to unsteady movement and clumsiness. Athletes train this sense deliberately, practicing balance exercises, agility drills, and fine motor skills to sharpen their body's internal map. In this way, proprioception can be strengthened and refined. Just like other senses, proprioception is not only about movement but also about identity. It gives us a sense of ownership over our bodies, a constant awareness that this hand is mine, this arm belongs to me. Experiments in psychology, such as the rubber hand illusion, demonstrate how easily the brain can be tricked into adopting an external object as part of the body if visual and tactile cues align. This shows that proprioception works in concert with other senses to construct the feeling of bodily self. It is not an isolated stream of information but part of a network that creates our sense of embodiment. Children develop proprioception gradually, learning to coordinate movement as their brains integrate sensory feedback. A baby reaching for a toy may miss at first, but with practice, the signals from muscles and joints teach the brain how to guide the hand more accurately. Crawling, walking, and running all depend on the refinement of this sense. Play, with its climbing, balancing, and tumbling, strengthens proprioception as well. The development of this sense is a story of learning and adaptation, one that continues throughout life as new skills are acquired. Proprioception also interacts with emotion and well-being. Physical activity that challenges balance and coordination, such as yoga, dance, or martial arts, can create a sense of grounding and presence. This is partly because such activities heighten awareness of proprioceptive signals, reconnecting the mind with the body. Many forms of meditation and relaxation emphasize awareness of posture, breath, and movement, drawing upon proprioception to anchor attention in the present moment. In this way, the sense of self in space becomes not only a tool for movement, but also a pathway to calm and mindfulness. Though we rarely notice it, proprioception works continuously, shaping every gesture and action. It allows us to navigate the world without constant thought, freeing the mind for other tasks, while the body moves with quiet competence. It is the hidden companion of all the senses, linking the external world of sight and sound with the internal awareness of the body. Without it, life would be disjointed and uncertain. With it, we live in fluid connection with our surroundings, each step and gesture carried out with assurance. In essence, proprioception is the silent sense of the body, the awareness that grounds us in space and gives us ownership of our movements. It is the reason we can trust our limbs to obey us without constant supervision, the reason we can move with grace, and the reason we feel present in our own bodies. Though invisible and often unrecognized, it is one of the most profound senses, for it provides not only balance and coordination, but also the foundation of embodied selfhood. To sense oneself in space is to belong in the world, to live not as a disembodied observer, but as a being fully present, moving and acting with ease. 15. Interoception. Listening to the inner body. There is a realm of sensing that does not reach outward to the world, but inward to the body itself. While sight reveals light, hearing reveals sound, and touch reveals contact, interoception reveals the quiet states of the body within. It is the sense that tells us when we are hungry, thirsty, or tired, when our hearts beat fast or slow, when our stomachs churn or rest quietly. It is the gentle monitor of breathing, the whisper that calls for water, the unease that signals illness, the comfort that comes when the body is balanced and at ease. Interoception is sometimes called the hidden sense because it operates constantly yet often without our awareness. It is the continuous background music of the body's state, guiding our behavior and emotions in ways both subtle and profound. The machinery of interoception begins with receptors scattered throughout the body. Unlike the receptors of vision or hearing, which are confined to specific organs, interoceptive receptors are distributed widely. They are found in the heart, lungs, stomach, intestines, bladder, muscles, and even in the skin. These receptors detect a variety of signals: stretch in the walls of organs, chemical levels in the blood, temperature inside the body, pressure in the chest, the flow of breath. When they are activated, they send information along nerves, most notably the vagus nerve, which travels from the brainstem deep into the chest and abdomen. These signals converge in the brain, particularly in the insular cortex, a region thought to be central to interoception. What emerges from this constant stream of signals is a sense of the body's internal condition, sometimes called the feeling of being alive. This feeling is not always in the foreground of awareness. Most of the time, interoception works quietly, maintaining homeostasis without drawing attention. The brain monitors blood sugar and signals hunger before it falls too low. It measures hydration and produces thirst when water is needed. It senses oxygen and carbon dioxide, adjusting breathing without conscious effort. These processes continue day and night, ensuring that the body remains balanced, adjusting temperature, pressure, and chemistry to sustain life. When interoceptive signals grow strong, they enter awareness as urges or sensations. Hunger, thirst, breathlessness, nausea, fullness, or fatigue all arise in this way. They are not random discomforts, but messages from the body to the mind, urging action. To eat, to drink, to rest, to withdraw, these behaviors are guided by interoceptive awareness. Even emotions are closely tied to these bodily signals. Anxiety often comes with a racing heart, tightness in the chest, or an uneasy stomach. Calmness comes with steady breathing and a relaxed pulse. In this sense, interoception bridges the physical and emotional, turning bodily states into feelings and feelings into conscious experience. The role of interoception in emotion has been recognized by philosophers and scientists alike. William James, a pioneer of psychology, suggested that emotions arise from the perception of bodily changes. We feel afraid not only because we recognize danger, but because we sense our bodies trembling, our hearts racing. This theory, though debated, points to the deep connection between interoception and emotion. Modern research supports the idea that awareness of bodily states shapes emotional experience. The same physical signals interpreted one way may feel like excitement. Interpreted another, they may feel like anxiety. Interoception gives rise to the raw material of feeling, and the mind interprets it in context. Interoceptive awareness varies among individuals. Some people are highly attuned to their internal states, able to detect subtle changes in heartbeat or breathing. Others may be less sensitive, their bodies signaling quietly without entering awareness. This variability influences not only health but also emotion and decision-making. Those who are more interoceptively aware may be more in touch with their feelings, able to recognize stress or calm more readily. Practices such as meditation, yoga, and mindfulness often emphasize awareness of the breath and the body, training attention toward interoceptive signals. Such practices can heighten sensitivity to these quiet cues, fostering a sense of connection with the body and a grounding in the present moment. Interoception also plays a crucial role in health. Disruptions in interoceptive processing can contribute to conditions such as anxiety disorders, depression, or eating disorders. For example, if signals of fullness or hunger are misinterpreted or muted, eating patterns may be disturbed. If bodily signals of stress are amplified, anxiety may become overwhelming. Conversely, training interoceptive awareness can support well-being, helping individuals regulate emotions, recognize needs, and respond to the body's messages more effectively. The dialogue between body and mind depends on clear, interoceptive communication. And when that dialogue falters, difficulties arise. Even in ordinary life, interoception influences behavior more than we realize. Decisions are shaped not only by logic but by gut feelings, sensations that arise from internal states and guide choices. These feelings may not be fully conscious, yet they influence judgment and action. A tightness in the chest may warn us to avoid a situation. A sense of calm may encourage us to proceed. These signals reflect the integration of interoception with memory, emotion, and reasoning, creating a form of embodied intelligence. In this way, the body participates in decision-making, not only as a vessel, but as an active partner in thought. The interplay between interoception and other senses is subtle but constant. Balance depends in part on signals from the inner ear, but also on awareness of muscles and posture. Touch provides information about the external world, while interoception provides information about the internal environment, and together they shape the sense of self. Even vision and hearing are influenced by interoceptive states. When we are tired, sights may blur and sounds may irritate. When we are rested and nourished, the same stimuli feel clearer and more pleasant. Interoception sets the tone for perception, coloring the way we experience the outer world. In its quiet way, interoception also shapes identity. Our sense of self is not only a collection of thoughts and memories, but also the feeling of inhabiting a body, the ongoing awareness of heartbeat, breath, and internal rhythm. This embodied sense of self grounds us in the present and connects us to the continuity of life. To lose interoception would be to lose this anchor, to feel detached from the body that sustains us. Its presence, though often unnoticed, is part of what makes us feel whole. To reflect on interoception is to recognize the deep wisdom of the body. It is always listening, always monitoring, always sending signals that sustain balance. Hunger and thirst are reminders to replenish. Fatigue is a reminder to rest. Pain is a reminder to protect. Calm is a reminder to stay. These messages, though sometimes subtle, are the language of survival, spoken not in words but in sensations. They are the body's way of caring for itself, guiding the mind to act in harmony with its needs. In essence, interoception is the inner sense, the quiet awareness of the body's interior landscape. It is the feeling of the heart's beat, the rhythm of the breath, the fullness of the stomach, the thirst of the mouth, the comfort of rest, the unease of imbalance. It is both the guardian of health and the foundation of feeling, shaping not only what we do, but who we are. To listen to the inner body is to acknowledge this hidden sense, to honor the dialogue between body and mind, and to find balance in the simple awareness of being alive. 16. Time perception. Time is not a substance we can touch, nor a color we can see, nor a vibration we can hear. Yet it is one of the most fundamental elements of human experience. Every heartbeat, every breath, every step we take unfolds in time, carried forward by a rhythm that never pauses. Though we cannot hold it in our hands, we sense its passage in countless ways. We feel the slow drift of hours, the quick rush of moments, the weight of waiting, and the ease of flow. when we are absorbed in something we love. This awareness of duration, of sequence, and of rhythm is called time perception. And while it is not often listed alongside sight, sound, or touch, it is nonetheless a sense in its own right, shaping how we experience the world and ourselves. Time perception is built into the body at many levels. At the most fundamental, our cells carry circadian rhythms, cycles of activity and rest that align with the day and night. These rhythms are governed by the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus, a cluster of neurons that acts as the body's master clock. Light enters the eyes, signals travel along nerves, and this central clock resets itself each day to keep us aligned with the rising and setting of the sun. The circadian rhythm regulates sleep and wakefulness, hormone release, body temperature, and countless other processes. Even if we lived in darkness, the body would continue to keep time, drifting slightly, but always carrying its own rhythm. This internal clock is one of the foundations of our sense of time, though it operates largely beyond awareness. Beyond circadian cycles, the brain also tracks shorter intervals, the seconds and minutes that shape daily experience. When we wait for a kettle to boil, when we tap a foot to music, when we pause between breaths, we are sensing these smaller spans. The mechanisms of this perception are distributed across the brain, involving regions such as the basal ganglia, cerebellum, and frontal cortex. Unlike vision, which has a dedicated organ in the eyes, time perception does not arise from a single structure, but from networks working together. These networks integrate signals from movement, sound, and attention, building a sense of sequence and duration. One of the most striking qualities of time perception is its flexibility. Time does not always feel the same. Moments of joy seem to pass quickly, while periods of waiting or boredom stretch endlessly. In danger, time may feel slowed, each second elongated as the brain heightens awareness. In flow states, when attention is fully absorbed, hours may pass unnoticed, as though time itself has dissolved. These variations reveal that time perception is not fixed but shaped by attention, emotion, and context. The brain does not simply record time. It experiences it, bending it according to state of mind. The sense of rhythm is a central part of time perception. The brain is exquisitely sensitive to patterns of beats, allowing us to clap in time, march in step, or dance to music. This ability is not only cultural but biological, shared across humanity and present even in infants. The cerebellum and basal ganglia contribute to this sense, tracking intervals and predicting when the next beat will fall. Rhythm allows us to coordinate with others, to move in synchrony, and to feel part of something larger. It also provides structure to speech, which depends on timing for meaning and emphasis. Without rhythm, communication and music alike would collapse into confusion. Memory is another key element of time perception. Our sense of duration depends on how much information is processed during an interval. A day filled with new experiences may feel long in retrospect, while a day of repetition may feel short. This is why childhood summers seemed endless, filled with novelty and discovery, while adult years seem to pass quickly, structured by routine. The brain marks time not only by clocks but by memory, counting moments by the richness of what they contain. Time perception is therefore not only about the present but also about how we reflect on the past. Attention also plays a powerful role. When we focus closely on time, it seems to drag, as when watching a clock during waiting. When we are distracted or engaged, time seems to fly. This is because attention influences the brain's internal counting, with more attention creating a denser perception of moments. Emotions add yet another layer. Fear often stretches time, as the brain gathers more detail, increasing the density of memory. Joy often shortens it, as the mind flows smoothly without monitoring. In this way, time perception is not objective but subjective, colored by the inner state of the observer. Even the body contributes. The heart and breath set natural rhythms, and their pace influences the sense of time. When the heart races, time may feel fast or urgent. When breathing slows, time may feel more spacious. Practices such as meditation often focus on the breath precisely because it anchors awareness in rhythm, allowing time to be felt as calm and steady rather than rushing or fragmented. In these practices, interoception and time perception meet, linking inner rhythm to the flow of moments. There are also moments when time perception falters. Fatigue, illness, or neurological conditions can distort the sense of duration. Some disorders, such as Parkinson's disease, affect the basal ganglia and alter timing ability. Drugs and altered states of consciousness can stretch or compress time, creating experiences where minutes feel like hours or hours like minutes. These distortions remind us that time perception is a construction of the brain, not a direct reading of reality. It is the mind's interpretation of sequences, always shaped by biology and context. Despite its subjectivity, time perception is essential for survival. Coordinating movement requires precise timing, whether catching a ball, crossing a street, or speaking in conversation. Anticipating the future, planning ahead, and remembering the past all depend on an awareness of duration and sequence. Even at the most basic level, survival requires timing, the rhythm of heartbeats, the cycle of breath, the alternation of sleep and wake. Time perception is therefore not a luxury but a necessity, woven into the fabric of life itself. Culturally, humans have long sought to measure and understand time. Sundials, clocks, calendars, and now digital devices all extend our natural perception, creating external structures that align societies. Yet beneath these tools, the inner sense remains, carrying its own rhythm. No matter how precisely clocks may tick, the subjective experience of time continues to flow according to the mind's state. This coexistence of external measurement and internal perception defines the human relationship with time, a dance between objectivity and subjectivity. In reflecting on time perception, we recognize that it is one of the most profound senses, though it does not fit neatly into the traditional categories. It is not tied to a single organ but to networks across the brain and body. It is not constant but fluid, shaped by attention, emotion, and memory. It is both universal and personal, shared by all yet experienced differently by each. Time is both a measure and a feeling, both a rhythm and a memory, both a constraint and a freedom. In essence, time perception is the inner sense of continuity, the awareness that life unfolds moment by moment, carrying us forward in an unbroken flow. It is the pulse of existence, felt in heartbeats, breaths, rhythms, and memories. To sense time is to live within the stream of life, to know the difference between past and future, and to find meaning in the present. Though intangible, it is one of the most intimate senses, for it shapes not only how we move through the world, but how we experience our very existence within it. 17. Cross senses. Synesthesia. Most people experience the senses as distinct streams of information. Sight delivers light and color. Hearing brings sound and tone. Touch conveys texture and pressure. Taste and smell add the chemistry of flavor and aroma. Each sense seems to have its own pathway, its own specialized receptors, its own domain of the world. Yet for some individuals, these boundaries blur, and the senses overlap in unusual ways. This blending of the senses is called synesthesia, from the Greek words for together and sensation. To a synesthete, sounds may have colors, numbers may have personalities, or letters may carry textures. What is ordinary for one person becomes extraordinary for another, as if the senses are instruments playing not separately but in unexpected harmony. Synesthesia is not a disorder but a variation in perception, one that has fascinated scientists, artists, and philosophers for centuries. It is estimated to occur in a small but significant portion of the population, perhaps as many as 1 in 25 people. For those who have it, it often feels natural, a normal part of experience. Many synesthetes report that they did not realize their perceptions were unusual until they discovered that others did not share them. To see the letter A as bright red, or to hear a trumpet note as golden may feel as automatic and unquestioned as seeing the sky as blue. The most common form of synesthesia is grapheme color synesthesia, in which letters or numbers evoke specific colors. For example, the number 4 may always appear green, while the letter S is always yellow. These associations are consistent and stable across time. A synesthete who perceives 7 as purple will likely always perceive it as purple. Another common form is chromesthesia, in which sounds evoke colors. A piano note may appear as a burst of blue, or a violin tone may shimmer in orange. Some synesthetes experience lexical gustatory synesthesia, in which words trigger tastes. A name may taste like chocolate, a phrase like toast. Still others experience spatial sequence synesthesia, in which numbers, days of the week, or months of the year are seen as arranged in specific spatial patterns around the body. The variety of synesthetic experiences is vast, demonstrating the many ways in which the senses can interlace. The mechanisms of synesthesia are not yet fully understood, but research suggests that it arises from increased communication between sensory areas of the brain. In most people, the senses are processed in separate but interconnected regions, with signals crossing when needed. In synesthetes, these connections may be stronger, allowing activity in one sensory region to trigger activity in another. For example, when the visual cortex processes a letter, it may also activate color processing regions, creating the experience of colored letters. Genetics appears to play a role, as synesthesia often runs in families. Though the specific inheritance is complex, brain imaging studies have confirmed that synesthetic experiences are not imagined but correspond to real patterns of neural activity. When a synesthete sees a letter as colored, the color areas of the brain are indeed active, even though no color is physically present. The experience of synesthesia is often described as involuntary yet consistent. It is not something a person decides to imagine, but something that occurs automatically. Yet within this automaticity, there is individuality. No two synesthetes necessarily share the same associations. One person may see the letter B as blue, another as orange, another as pink. These differences suggest that synesthesia reflects unique wiring in the brain, shaped perhaps by both biology and experience. Some theories propose that early childhood learning may influence the associations, with colors in alphabet blocks or educational materials, leaving lasting imprints. Whatever its origins, synesthesia reveals the brain's flexibility and the many ways in which perception can be constructed. The artistic implications of synesthesia are profound. Many artists, musicians, and writers throughout history have described experiences suggestive of synesthesia. Composers like Scriabin and Liszt associated music with color, while painters like Kandinsky sought to unite sound and sight in visual art. Synesthesia offers a glimpse of a world where the senses are not separate but blended, where music can be seen, words can be tasted, and numbers can be felt as textures. Whether or not all artists who claimed synesthetic experience truly had it, the idea of crossing senses has inspired creativity across disciplines, reminding us that perception is not fixed, but open to interpretation and imagination. For synesthetes, the experience is often neutral or positive, adding richness to life. Many report that it aids memory, as associations between senses provide additional cues. A student may recall phone numbers more easily if each digit carries a color. A musician may remember compositions more vividly if notes appear in hues. Some find comfort or beauty in their synesthetic perceptions, considering them a gift. Yet in some cases, synesthesia can be distracting, as overwhelming associations compete with daily tasks. Still, it is rarely considered a problem, more often an unusual trait that shapes the way the world is experienced. Synesthesia also raises questions about perception itself. If the brain can naturally blend senses, what does this suggest about the boundaries between them? Perhaps the division of senses is not as rigid as we imagine. Indeed, in infancy, some researchers believe that perception may be more synesthetic, with senses less differentiated. As the brain develops, connections are pruned and refined, creating the distinct sensory streams of adulthood. In synesthetes, some of these connections may persist, offering a glimpse of the brain's early state. If so, synesthesia is not an anomaly, but a window into the flexibility of perception, a reminder that our way of experiencing the world is only one of many possible ways. Even for those who do not experience synesthesia directly, the brain often blends senses in subtler ways. We describe voices as warm or cold, colors as loud or quiet, flavors as sharp or dull. These metaphors reflect a natural tendency to cross sensory domains, to borrow qualities from one sense, to describe another. Musicians speak of timbre in terms of brightness or darkness. Chefs describe flavors as balanced or heavy. Everyday language reveals that the senses are not entirely separate but often intermingle in thought. Synesthesia may be an intensified form of this universal blending, a vivid expression of something that exists in all minds. The study of synesthesia continues to expand, offering insights not only into the condition itself but into the nature of perception more broadly. It challenges the assumption that senses are isolated, showing instead that they are deeply interconnected. It suggests that the boundaries between vision, hearing, taste, touch, and smell are porous, capable of overlap. It demonstrates that perception is not a mirror of reality but a construction of the brain, shaped by wiring, memory, and imagination. In reflecting on synesthesia, we find a sense that reveals the creativity of the nervous system. It shows that the brain is not bound to one way of perceiving but can weave senses together into new forms. It suggests that the world we experience is not fixed but malleable, that each person lives in a slightly different sensory reality. Synesthesia is a reminder that perception is both universal and individual, shared and unique, ordinary and extraordinary. In essence, synesthesia is the crossing of senses, the blending of signals into unexpected harmonies. It is the color of sound, the taste of words, the shape of numbers, the rhythm of space. It is a reminder that the brain is not limited to rigid categories but is capable of creating a rich tapestry of experience, more varied than we often imagine. To live with synesthesia is to live in a world where boundaries dissolve, where senses sing together in chorus, and where perception itself becomes a kind of art. 18. The development of the senses in childhood. The journey of the senses begins before birth. Within the quiet environment of the womb, the foundations of perception are already being laid. Long before the eyes open to light, long before the nose breathes in air, the body is already listening, touching, and feeling. The development of the senses is one of the most remarkable stories of human growth, for it transforms a helpless infant into a curious child, aware of the world and able to interact with it. Each sense emerges in its own time, gradually refining itself through use, guided both by biology and by experience. Childhood is therefore not only a period of growth in size and strength, but also in perception, as the senses awaken, sharpen, and integrate into the fabric of life. Touch is the earliest of the senses to appear. Even in the womb, the fetus responds to gentle contact, to pressure and vibration. The skin, the largest sensory organ, becomes active long before birth, guiding the developing brain in its awareness of self and environment. This early sensitivity lays the foundation for connection, for touch is the sense that bonds the infant to the caregiver after birth. The first embrace, the skin-to-skin contact, the soothing stroke of a parent, all of these experiences are mediated by touch. They provide not only comfort but also crucial stimulation for the growing nervous system. Infants who are held and touched flourish, while those deprived of touch may suffer delays in growth and development. Touch thus sets the stage for both physical and emotional well-being. Hearing develops early as well. By the third trimester, the fetus can detect sounds, particularly the rhythm of the mother's heartbeat and the muffled tones of voices from outside the womb. These early auditory experiences prepare the infant for the world beyond birth. Newborns are often soothed by familiar sounds they heard in utero, such as a mother's voice or certain pieces of music. After birth, hearing continues to sharpen. Infants quickly learn to distinguish the tones of speech, the melody of language, and the emotional qualities carried in sound. This early sensitivity to rhythm and pitch becomes the foundation for language acquisition. As babies begin to babble, imitate, and eventually speak, vision is slower to mature. At birth, the eyes are capable of detecting light and shape, but clarity is limited. Newborns can see only a short distance, just far enough to focus on a caregiver's face during feeding. Over the first months, the visual system undergoes rapid development. The ability to track moving objects, to perceive depth, and to distinguish colors gradually emerges. By 6 months, infants can see with much greater clarity, and by the end of the first year, vision approaches that of an adult. Experience plays a vital role in this development, as visual input strengthens the neural pathways of the brain. Deprivation of visual stimuli in early life can lead to lasting impairments, demonstrating the importance of early exposure. Vision is not simply given but cultivated through interaction with the world. Taste and smell also begin before birth. Amniotic fluid carries flavors from the mother's diet, and the fetus swallows this fluid, becoming accustomed to tastes that will later be familiar in milk and food. After birth, taste buds are already functional, and infants show preferences for sweetness, often turning away from bitter or sour flavors. Smell, too, is active, allowing newborns to recognize the scent of their mother within days. These chemical senses guide feeding and bonding, ensuring that the infant seeks nourishment and comfort from familiar sources. Over time, exposure to a variety of tastes and smells shapes preferences, introducing the child to the cultural flavors of the family and community. Balance and proprioception, though less obvious, also develop rapidly. Even as infants lie on their backs, they begin to sense their position and to move in response. Rolling over, crawling, and standing are milestones that reflect the maturation of the vestibular system and proprioceptive feedback. These senses allow the child to coordinate movement, to explore the environment, and eventually to walk and run. Play becomes the natural training ground, as climbing, jumping, and swinging refine balance and spatial awareness. Childhood games, though simple in appearance, are profound exercises in sensory development. Interoception, the awareness of internal states, is present as well, though infants cannot yet express it in words. Hunger, thirst, discomfort, or fullness are communicated through crying, movements, and facial expressions. Caregivers learn to interpret these signals, responding with food, warmth, or comfort. Over time, children begin to recognize and name these feelings, learning to say when they are hungry, tired, or unwell. This growing awareness becomes essential for self-regulation, allowing the child to care for their own needs as independence increases. The senses do not develop in isolation but in interaction. Vision and hearing combine to support language learning. Touch and proprioception combine to support movement. Smell and taste combine to create flavor. The brain integrates these streams into a coherent whole, constructing a world that feels unified and meaningful. As children grow, they refine this integration, learning to coordinate senses in complex tasks, such as reading, playing instruments, or sports. The development of multisensory integration is one of the great achievements of childhood, enabling the richness of adult perception. Critical periods play an important role. There are windows of time during which sensory input is especially crucial. For vision, early exposure to light and form is necessary for normal development. For hearing, exposure to language during the first years is essential for full fluency. These sensitive periods reflect the plasticity of the young brain, which is highly adaptable but also dependent on experience. Deprivation during these times can lead to lasting deficits, while rich stimulation can enhance ability. This is why childhood environments matter so deeply, for they shape not only learning but the senses themselves. As children grow into adolescence, the senses continue to refine, though at a slower pace. Hearing remains sharp, often more sensitive than in adulthood. Vision reaches stability, though habits such as reading and screen use can influence its clarity. Taste preferences expand, with many young people beginning to appreciate flavors they rejected in early childhood. Balance and coordination become more sophisticated, allowing for mastery of sports, dance, and skilled movements. Interoceptive awareness grows as well, with adolescents becoming more conscious of emotional states linked to the body. The development of the senses in childhood is therefore a story of awakening, refinement, and integration. From the first stirrings in the womb to the complex perceptions of adolescence, the senses guide growth and learning. They shape how the child engages with the world, how they bond with others, and how they build knowledge and memory. Each sense plays its part, but together, they create the fullness of experience that defines human life. In essence, the development of the senses is the foundation of childhood itself. It is how the child learns to see, hear, taste, touch, and feel. It is how the body discovers balance, how the mind discovers meaning, and how the self discovers connection. To grow is to sense, and to sense is to grow. Childhood is the great unfolding of this process, a time when perception blossoms and life opens outward, guided by the quiet yet powerful awakening of the senses. 19. Aging and the senses. The senses accompany us through every stage of life, from the earliest stirrings in the womb to the final years of old age. They guide learning in childhood, exploration in youth, work and relationships in adulthood, and reflection in later years. Yet they do not remain unchanged. As the body ages, the senses shift, sometimes subtly, sometimes profoundly. Some aspects sharpen through experience, while others gradually diminish as cells and structures wear down with time. This journey of sensory change is not simply decline but adaptation. For even as certain capacities fade, the human being finds new ways to perceive, to connect, and to find meaning in the world. Vision often shows the first signs of change. With age, the lens of the eye gradually becomes less flexible, making it harder to focus on close objects. This condition, called presbyopia, usually begins in midlife, leading many to need reading glasses. The lens may also grow clouded with time, producing cataracts that blur vision. The retina, where light is converted into signals, may show wear in the form of age-related macular degeneration, affecting central vision, or glaucoma. Even without disease, the pupil responds more slowly to changes in light, and colors may appear less vivid as the lens yellows. Yet adaptation is possible. Glasses, brighter lighting, and slower adjustment allow vision to remain a vital sense throughout life. Many older people also develop a deeper appreciation for visual beauty, lingering more on the details of nature, art, or faces, as if the slowing of sight brings greater mindfulness. Hearing, too, changes with age. The tiny hair cells of the cochlea, once finely tuned to a wide range of frequencies, gradually wear down, especially those that detect high-pitched sounds. This age-related hearing loss, called presbycusis, makes it harder to follow conversations, particularly in noisy environments. Voices may seem muffled, music less clear, birdsong faint. Hearing loss can bring frustration, yet modern aids restore much of what is lost, and many people learn to rely more on context, lip reading, and attention to compensate. Some also discover that with reduced hearing, the world becomes quieter, less overwhelming, and this calmness can be welcomed. In later years, hearing often shifts from a tool of constant information to a source of selected, treasured sounds, familiar voices, beloved songs, the comforting hum of the world. Taste and smell often diminish as well. Taste buds may decrease in number, and olfactory receptors in the nose may become less sensitive. Food may seem less flavorful, and appetite may wane. Yet the senses of taste and smell are not only biological but cultural and emotional. And many older adults adapt by seeking stronger flavors, spices, or cherished recipes. While sweetness may remain strong, bitterness and subtle aromas may fade, leading to a preference for bolder tastes. The decline of smell can carry risks, such as missing the odor of smoke or spoiled food, but it also invites adaptation: smoke detectors, careful attention, and reliance on sight. More importantly, meals in later years often become less about flavor alone and more about the company and ritual they bring. As shared food nourishes connection even when taste is muted, the sense of touch changes as well. The skin becomes thinner, drier, and less elastic, reducing its sensitivity. Receptors in the skin may transmit signals more slowly, dulling the perception of texture, vibration, or temperature. Pain perception may shift, sometimes duller, sometimes heightened. Balance and proprioception, too, can decline as muscles weaken, joints stiffen, and vestibular structures in the inner ear lose sensitivity. These changes can make falls more likely and movement less steady. Yet touch also deepens in meaning. A gentle hand on the shoulder, a hug from a loved one, the softness of fabric, the warmth of the sun, all carry profound comfort. Touch becomes less about exploration and more about reassurance, serving as a bridge of intimacy and care. Interoception, the awareness of the body's inner state, also shifts. Signals of hunger, thirst, or fullness may become less pronounced, sometimes leading to undernutrition or dehydration, if not consciously attended to. The heart and lungs may send signals of effort more quickly, making exertion feel heavier. Fatigue may come sooner, rest more necessary. Yet many older adults develop a refined awareness of these cues, pacing themselves, listening to their bodies more carefully, respecting the rhythms of energy and rest. In this way, interoception becomes not weaker, but wiser, guiding life with greater balance and moderation. Even the perception of time alters with age. Years that seemed endless in childhood now seem to pass quickly, as routine compresses memory, and decades slip by with startling speed. This subjective acceleration of time is one of the most widely shared experiences of aging. Yet within this quickening, moments may also stretch quiet mornings, long walks, hours spent in reflection. Older adults often report that while years seem short, individual days feel longer and richer, filled with attention to details overlooked in youth. Time, like the senses, becomes not only shorter but deeper, more textured, more reflective. The emotional tone of the senses also changes with age. Research suggests that older adults often experience less reactivity to negative stimuli and greater sensitivity to positive ones. A bitter taste may be ignored, while sweetness brings delight. Harsh sounds may fade, while gentle voices linger. Visual details may blur, but beauty is more readily appreciated. This shift reflects not only biological changes but also the perspective of experience. Having lived through decades, the older mind often seeks what is nourishing, comforting, and meaningful, filtering out what is harsh. In this way, aging brings not only sensory decline but also sensory refinement, a tuning of perception toward what matters most. Adaptation is one of the great themes of sensory aging. Glasses sharpen vision. Hearing aids amplify sound. Strong flavors revive taste. Supportive shoes and careful movement enhance balance. Technology and care extend the reach of the senses, but more than that, the mind itself adapts, learning to value quality over quantity, subtlety over sharpness, presence over novelty. The fading of the senses does not mean the fading of life's richness, but rather a shift in how that richness is received. The social role of the senses grows in importance with age. While the young may seek sensation for exploration, the older often seek it for connection. The taste of a shared meal, the sound of conversation, the sight of loved ones, the touch of a caring hand. These sensory experiences carry immense weight. They ground the individual in community, in memory, and in the continuity of life. Even as the senses wane, their power to create meaning and connection only deepens. In reflecting on aging and the senses, one sees not only decline but transformation. The sharpness of youth may fade, but the depth of experience grows. The brightness of colors may dim, but the beauty of presence shines. The clarity of hearing may falter, but the voice of memory strengthens. Taste and smell may dull, but the flavor of connection remains. Touch may lose its sensitivity, but its comfort becomes greater. The senses, though altered, remain the channels of life, carrying us through each stage, each moment, each memory. In essence, aging is not the loss of the senses, but their evolution. They change, adapt, and find new meanings. They remind us that life is not about endless novelty, but about depth, presence, and connection. The senses in old age are not the same as in youth, but they are no less valuable. They are the quieter companions of reflection, guiding us gently through the later chapters of life, reminding us that to sense is to live, and to live is to continue perceiving the beauty of the world in whatever form it may appear. 20. From the very beginning of life until its closing moments, the human experience is shaped by the senses. Each one has its own story, its own pathway, its own way of bringing the world into awareness. Vision brings the brilliance of light, hearing the richness of sound, touch the immediacy of contact, taste and smell, the intimacy of flavor and memory. Balance steadies us, proprioception grounds us in space, Interoception whispers the states of the inner body, and time perception weaves it all into continuity. Some of these senses are bold and obvious, others quiet and subtle, but together they create the wholeness of perception. It is not in isolation that they shine most brightly, but in harmony, as if the human being is a great instrument, playing a symphony of sensation every moment of life. To reflect on the senses as a whole is to realize that they are not simply channels of information but threads of connection. They link us to the world, to one another, and to ourselves. Vision does not only reveal light and form, it reveals faces, landscapes, and beauty. Hearing does not only decode vibrations, it carries voices, music, and language, binding us in communication. Touch does not only measure pressure, it conveys comfort, intimacy, and reassurance. Taste and smell do not only detect molecules, they carry culture, memory, and belonging. Even the more hidden senses balance, proprioception, interoception, time are not abstract mechanisms but vital companions, anchoring us in space, guiding our movements, regulating our needs, and giving shape to our days. This orchestration is seamless, so much so that we rarely notice it. We open our eyes and the world appears whole. We listen and sounds make sense. We move and our limbs follow without hesitation. We eat and flavors emerge rich and complex. Beneath this apparent effortlessness, thousands of receptors are firing, nerves are carrying signals, and the brain is weaving them into the tapestry of perception. The symphony plays without pause, a performance so constant that we forget it is even happening. Yet when we stop to consider it, when we reflect on what it means to sense, the wonder of it becomes clear. The senses are not static. They are dynamic, evolving across time. In childhood, they awaken, each one developing in turn, guiding discovery and play. In youth, they are sharp and vivid, fueling learning and exploration. In adulthood, they serve as tools of work, love, and creativity, shaping the fullness of daily life. In aging, they change, sometimes fading, sometimes deepening, but always continuing to connect. Their forms shift, but their presence endures. They are companions from first breath to last, always there, always shaping the way life is felt. The symphony of the senses is also profoundly individual. No two people experience the world in exactly the same way. The same color may appear slightly different to different eyes. The same taste may delight one person and repel another. The same sound may soothe one ear and irritate another. Our sensory worlds are personal, shaped not only by biology but by memory, culture, and experience. The senses do not give us the world as it is, and in this sense, each human being lives within a unique symphony, their own arrangement of notes and harmonies, their own interpretation of life. Yet the symphony is also universal. We all share the basic capacity to see, hear, touch, taste, and smell, to balance, to feel our bodies, to sense time. These commonalities unite us, allowing us to share experiences, to communicate, to build cultures around the shared meanings of sensation. A painting can be admired across generations, a song can be sung across cultures, a meal can be enjoyed across tables. The universality of the senses allows us to connect, while their individuality allows each person to bring something unique to that connection. The metaphor of the symphony is apt because, like an orchestra, the senses have different voices that come together in harmony. Vision may take the lead, like a bright trumpet, while hearing adds harmony like strings. Touch provides rhythm, steady and grounding. Smell and taste are the softer instruments, subtle but essential, adding depth and warmth. Balance and proprioception are like the percussion, keeping the body steady and in time. Interoception and time perception are like the underlying bass line, often unnoticed, but fundamental to the whole. Together, they create a composition that is richer than any single part, a composition that is life itself. Even silence, even stillness, is filled with the senses. Closing the eyes, we still hear. Quieting the ears, we still feel. Calming the body, we still sense heartbeat and breath. The symphony never ends. It simply shifts in tone, sometimes loud and vivid, sometimes soft and subtle. In meditation, in sleep, in rest, the senses continue, carrying the body through the rhythms of life. They are the constant companions of existence, never ceasing, never leaving, always there. The senses also remind us of our vulnerability. They are finite, fragile, easily dulled by illness, injury, or age. They can be tricked by illusions, deceived by distortions, shaped by expectation. Yet this fragility is part of their beauty. It shows that perception is not a rigid machine but a living process, responsive to the body and the world. The very fact that our senses can change, adapt, and even err is what allows them to bring such richness, for they are not limited to raw data but extend into meaning, memory, and imagination. To live with senses is to live in contact with the world. The warmth of the sun, the coolness of water, the color of autumn leaves, the sound of laughter, the fragrance of flowers, the taste of bread, the rhythm of walking, all of these are notes in the great symphony. Each day, thousands of sensations pass through us, most unnoticed, some treasured, all contributing to the ongoing composition. Life is not separate from the senses. It is made of them, carried in them, expressed through them. And so, when we reflect on the senses, we reflect on life itself. They are not only how we survive, but how we live, how we connect, how we find beauty, how we carry memory, how we feel meaning. They are the orchestra of existence, the performance that begins before birth and ends only with the last breath. They are the symphony of the human experience, always playing, always guiding, always reminding us that to sense is to be alive. In essence, the senses are the music of being, the harmony of body and world, the bridge between self and life. They are not separate, not isolated, but joined together in the great composition of perception. To hear the symphony of the senses is to recognize that every moment is filled with wonder, that every breath is part of the music, that every step is part of the rhythm. It is to live in awareness that life itself is a song, played not outside us but within us, on the instruments of the senses, always unfolding, always resonating, always carrying us gently through time.